Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the marathon session on current affairs from international relations, internal security, and disaster management, which is going to be extremely important for the upcoming mains examination. This marathon session, which will stretch for roughly 3 to 4 hours, it has been designed for three types of aspirants. If you are giving the mains exam in a couple of weeks, then this session is for you. It will be the easiest way to cover the most important current affairs from dynamic subjects like IR, internal security, and disaster management. Second, if you are serious about answer writing practice, let's say you're a 2026, 2027 aspirant, but if you're putting a lot of effort into answer writing practice, then this session is for you. Because today, along with covering the current affairs developments of the last 12 months, I would also focus extensively on answer writing. I will give you model questions. We will discuss the approach and the structure that you need to follow, and as well as a model answer that you can use for your reference for answer writing practice. And the third category of aspirants who can benefit from today's class would be those who are trying to revise the current affairs of the last 1 year, especially the mains focused current affairs. So if you fall into one of these three categories, then this session is for you. Stay with me for the next 4 hours. Trust me, I'll make your time completely worth it because we will be discussing 27 topics. There are 16 IR topics that I have chosen. I've carefully gone through the current affairs developments of the past 10 to 12 months, which can be very crucial for the coming mains exam. So we will cover 16 topics from IR and 8 topics from internal security. Most likely questions will appear from what we are going to discuss today. And finally, from disaster management, if time permits, I would like to cover 3 topics which are in the news over the last few months. So this is the agenda for today's session. But before we start, I have a very important announcement for 2026 aspirants. If you're looking to give a serious attempt next year, then this is your last chance to enroll for Unacademy Platinum. This is our most premium offering where you get an opportunity to get a almost offline like experience in an online class. In Unacademy Platinum, the cameras of the students would also be on, and the teacher gets to keep an eye on the students, provides for better interaction, better interactive experience, where the educator and the students in a small batch of 100 students would be able to develop a better rapport with the teachers, and the teacher will be able to see what you're doing, hold you accountable. And if you want such hand holding for your preparation, if you want such personalized guidance and mentorship from the educators themselves, then Unacademy Platinum is the right program for you. This will give you access for the live and recorded sessions, the test material. Every week, we conduct regular prelims and mains practice tests. There would be doubt resolution sessions. There would be mentoring sessions by senior IAS, IPS officers, and even by toppers of the exam as well. You will also get access to doubt resolution sessions and answer evaluation. So, if you want to enroll for this program, this is your last chance. If you join now, because a new batch has just started on the 4th of August, just a couple of days ago, Mukesh sir has started with geography classes. If you enroll for this batch, you will be still able to complete the syllabus before prelims 2026. Those interested can click on the link provided in the video description below. And if you want the PDF of today's session, please join my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. After the session ends, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. Today's PDF is very important because along with all the pointers needed for these current affairs topics, I've included practice questions with the answer writing structure, the framework, and a model answer. So this would be very useful for your reference. So do join my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. I'll share the PDF over here after the session concludes. So let's get started and let's begin with international relations. Let's look at the first topic, India-Pakistan relations. First, I would like to focus on India's neighborhood. Let's pick out some trending and relevant topics from our neighborhood, which could be very crucial for the upcoming mains. And then we will look at few global developments as well, which has an impact on India's interests. So when it comes to India-Pakistan, the most important development, of course, was the Pahalgam terror attack and India's response through Operation Sindoor, which led to a brief conflict between India and Pakistan. The eventual ceasefire that was worked out, and the implications of this. So let's quickly go through this topic, just the key pointers, and then we will pay special attention for your answer writing practice. So as you all know, Pakistan-sponsored terrorism has been one of India's biggest security challenges from several decades. So a few months ago, Pakistan-sponsored terrorists from the TRF, the Resistance Front, which is a shadow organization for Lashkar-e-Toiba. It's a covert front for Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is sponsored, funded, and directly backed by Pakistani state agencies like the ISI. This terrorist outfit carried out the dastardly Pahalgam attack, where several civilian tourists were killed, and the victims were profiled on the basis of their religion. Particularly, male tourists were singled out. Women and children were left behind as witnesses. And this dastardly attack, it caused complete outrage across the country. So following this incident, there was a lot of pressure on India to respond to Pakistan and to ensure that we deter such attacks in the coming days. Because in the past decade, India has tried setting up a new deterrence against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. When the Uri attacks happened in 2016, which was carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed, India retaliated by using the military option by carrying out surgical strikes in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. We also employed several coercive diplomatic tactics to corner Pakistan and isolate Pakistan. The same repeated in 2019 during the Pulwama attacks, again carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. India retaliated with Balkot airstrikes, accompanied with coercive diplomatic steps. But these one-off military strikes and coercive diplomacy was not yielding results. Though it had put some pressure on Pakistan and we had seen a slight decline in Pakistan-backed attacks against India, we again saw a dastardly attack in the form of Pahalgam attacks. This happens to be the biggest attack on Indian civilians since the 26/11 Mumbai attacks of 2008. So India decided to ensure that we respond in a commensurate manner. India decided that there has to be a matching response to punish Pakistan and place a cost on Pakistan for consistently sponsoring terrorism against India, particularly against civilians. So within few days after the attack, India launched a full-fledged military assault on the terrorist infrastructure of Pakistan. 9 terror sites were targeted, including the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed at Bhavalpur, the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Toiba at Muridke, and several terror camps and launch pads in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So these strikes by India marked a new doctrine from India to counter state-sponsored terrorism. And as expected, Pakistan responded. It treated this as an act of war, and it escalated the conflict, resulting in full-fledged military clashes between India and Pakistan. As you all know, Pakistan made an attempt using hundreds of drones and missiles, including ballistic missiles, to try and target Indian cities and civilian population from Srinagar in the north all the way till Bhuj in the south in Gujarat. Across the entire western sector, across Rajasthan, Punjab, the Jammu and Kashmir sector, and Gujarat, Pakistan opened up a front and India responded. And this time, India targeted military sites as well. as Pakistan was targeting our cities and civilian population in response to Operation Sindoor. India had to defend itself and as well as push back the Pakistani offensive. So, Indian armed forces did phenomenally well during Operation Sindoor. We took out multiple Pakistani air defense systems. We struck Pakistani military targets, including some of their strategic air bases, such as the Noor Khan Air Base and Jakobabad, and other important military facilities, including command centers, communication centers, radar sites, air defense installations, were successively hit by Indian attacks. And the Indian Navy even ensured complete vigilance in the maritime theater across the Arabian Sea. So, this successful counterstrike by India pushed Pakistan on the back foot, and it appeared that the conflict would escalate into a bigger war. But finally, Pakistan reached out to India. The two DGMOs agreed to arrive at a ceasefire based on Pakistan's request to end the conflict. Since India has no desire to fight unnecessary wars, our intention was never to escalate this into a full fledged conflict. India's goal was very, very clear that the Pahalgam attack had to be responded. A clear message had to be sent out. A cost had to be placed on Pakistan. So we achieved that on the very first day of Operation Sindoor when India struck terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. India clearly informed Pakistan as well that these were measured attacks from India. These were proportionate strikes. These were legitimate terror targets. India had sufficient intelligence to establish that the sites we had struck on the 7th of May were indeed terrorist targets. And India also made it clear that Operation Sindoor was non escalatory in nature, meaning we were not looking for any further escalation. India's objectives, the immediate objectives, had been achieved by hitting the terror facilities in Pakistan. But Pakistan, it chose to escalate, and India had to climb the escalation ladder. And that is how the conflict escalated. Now, this is where you need to understand India's new doctrine, the paradigm shift in India's response to Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, the reported involvement of United States and President Trump in claiming that they mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. This is what we need to understand and break it down so that if there is a question on these lines, you should be able to answer that. See, India's response under Operation Sindoor clearly marks a doctrinal shift. It's a new paradigm that India has opened in India-Pak relations. India has made it very clear that any future terror attacks on Indian soil against Indian targets, particularly against Indian civilians, that emanates from Pakistan, that in any way is linked with Pakistani state, would be responded. Because India will treat any future attacks from Pakistan as an act of war. We will no longer distinguish between non-state actors and the state actors who are sponsoring them. In case of similar future attacks against India, India will not only reserve the right to strike terrorist infrastructure, we will not hesitate even to strike Pakistani military and critical infrastructure if necessary. And this is a new doctrine that India has clearly laid down. India has said talks and terror cannot go hand in hand. We can't talk to Pakistan. We can't have a meaningful, peaceful relationship, a cordial relationship, when the same country is constantly sponsoring terrorism against India. India even resorted to coercive diplomatic measures by keeping the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, which we will discuss in a short while. India also cut off all the trade and withdrew the MFN status, and India downgraded the diplomatic relations itself, be it the visa consular services and our diplomatic presence in Islamabad, and as well as Pakistani diplomatic presence in New Delhi. Everything was scaled down, and India clearly resorted to coercive diplomatic action. We took this message around the world as well. India sent out all party parliamentary delegation to global capitals so that India's political establishment, right, which was united in this operation, would carry the message across the world from Washington to London to Beijing to highlight Pakistan's role and state involvement in sponsoring terrorism against India. India made it clear that water and blood cannot flow together. Trade and terror cannot continue. So, as long as Pakistan continues to bleed India and sponsor terrorism against India, we will not talk to Pakistan. We will not remain committed to the water treaty, the Indus Water Treaty, and we will not resume normal trade. So, this represents a clear shift in India's doctrine, in India's approach to deal with Pakistan sponsored terrorism. But, however, we did face some challenges during Operation Sindoor. The global support was largely divided. While there were some countries which firmly stood with India, they sympathized with India and they even backed India's right to defend itself against terrorism. There were some other powers which were hesitating to take that position. They were trying to bring pressure on both India and Pakistan to try and diffuse the crisis and de escalate from a possible bigger conflict which could have nuclear consequences. Look at European powers, for example. They were largely trying to take a more of a neutral stand and even appeared to be siding with Pakistan during some instances. And United States, the role of President Trump is what has really troubled India. As Trump went on to claim that he mediated the ceasefire and even declared this on social media, even when Operation Sindoor was still an ongoing live operation. He proclaimed that he was the one who pressurized India Pakistan by using trade talks as a negotiating tactic to agree and push both countries to agree for a ceasefire. But India rejected these claims. But Trump has repeatedly made these claims again and again over the last 3 months. And India, each and every time, has denied these allegations that US was somehow involved in the ceasefire. Because this raises the uncomfortable reality of US acting as a third party between India Pakistan, possibly over the Kashmir issue. Since 1971, India's position is very clear that any issue between India Pakistan is purely bilateral. In fact, Pakistan has made this commitment under the Shimla Agreement of 1972. Both sides have always maintained, at least India has always maintained, that any issue between India and Pakistan will be resolved bilaterally with no scope for any third party involvement. This is the clear position of India. So these allegations by US and the claims by Donald Trump is what really troubled India. And that again shows how it is challenging for India in the global diplomatic landscape to get support, even to fight against terrorism, even to defend ourselves against Pakistan sponsored terrorism. So now, if you're able to understand all these points and arguments, you should be able to build a good answer for any question that comes on this topic. See, any question will not go into the specifics of Operation Sindoor. That is more of an internal security question. A IR question related to Pahalgam attack and Operation Sindoor will focus on India's new doctrine, the challenges that we faced during Operation Sindoor, right? That would be the focus of a mains question. So let's take up a practice question. In the light of the 2025 ceasefire between India and Pakistan, discuss how India's evolving strategic posture impacts regional stability and its global diplomatic standing. Let's say such a question has been asked, and you're asked to discuss and evaluate these developments. See, the key to writing a good answer is always focusing on what the question is asking. Understanding the demands of the question is very important. In this question, it's expecting you to talk about the events that transpired between India and Pakistan, what led to the ceasefire, and what is India's evolving strategic posture, how does it impact the stability in South Asia, and what are the global implications of, particularly for India's foreign policy interests. So this is how you break down a question. So spend 20-30 seconds to carefully read the question and try to create a small flow chart, a small structure in the working page which is given to you. Before you jump into answer writing, don't blindly rush into writing the answer. Take few seconds to create a flow to ensure that you will stick to that flow that you have created And this ensures that your answer will remain as close to the question which has been asked. You will not deviate from the question which has been given. It's very important to stick to the question and not add any unnecessary points, because you have a clear word limit: 250 words for your 15 marks questions and 150 words for your 10-mark questions. Even your time is limited. You will roughly get 7 minutes for a 10-mark question, roughly around 11 minutes for 15-mark question. So you can't write unnecessary points. You can't waste your time. You can't waste the word limit. So start the introduction directly by referring to the event. By referring to Pahalgam attack and Operation Sindoor, in one line, you can bring out as to what happened. You can mention this was India's first major deep strike in Pakistani territory since 1971. India was retaliating against Pakistan sponsored terrorism, and we carried out strikes against terror infrastructure in Pakistan and POK. You can even mention these strikes by India were non escalatory, proportionate, and legitimate targets were hit. And then introduce the ceasefire. Mention that the conflict was quickly de escalated with a ceasefire that was worked out between India and Pakistan. But the allegations that Trump was somehow involved in pushing both India and Pakistan to agree to a ceasefire has created challenges. It has created a new difficulty for India. To set the tone, set the context, and then in the body, you can explain the evolving strategic posture of India. You can explain the shift from strategic restraint to strategic responsiveness, how India has become more proactive to directly counter Pakistan sponsored terrorism, and how India is resorting to military options, punitive options to punish Pakistan, apart from diplomatic and economic measures that India has been taking to punish Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism. You need to mention the political risk which is being taken by the Modi government, specifically highlighting the military options that India has used against Pakistan. Maybe you can share some details as well. Then discuss the impact of this on regional stability. 2 to 3 points, the short term and long term impact. The de escalation was much needed because we are not looking for a full scale war. Our goal was simple: it was to punish Pakistan, impose a cost on Pakistan, and deter future attacks from happening, and also to destroy the terrorist infrastructure. And also, you can mention Operation Sindoor is ongoing. India has not called off Operation Sindoor, meaning in the coming days, any violations from Pakistan. Just the other day, there have been reports of fresh ceasefire violations by Pakistan. So India will choose the right to retaliate against these provocations by Pakistan. So mention that and talk about the long term implications. What would this mean for terrorism? What would this mean for South Asia, the Kashmir issue? Couple of lines about this. And also point out that India has called the nuclear bluff of Pakistan. Previously, India was always worried that a conventional military escalation could possibly have nuclear consequences. But now we have called that bluff. We have shown the world that under the nuclear umbrella, within the nuclear threshold, we can use conventional military options to hit Pakistan. But at the same time, highlight the risks. There is always a potential risk of a nuclear escalation. One mistake, one miscalculation from either side could easily spin these events out of control. So you need to strike a note of warning as well, and then bring in the global dimension. The role of US, how India has denied any American involvement. We have reiterated our principle of strategic autonomy, our independent foreign policy, that we don't allow for third party involvement. Also point out the China Pakistan nexus. In fact, that is my next topic as well. We'll discuss that in detail. But here you can just add in the role of China, how China actively supported and backed Pakistan, not just through diplomatic support, but through active military support. And finally, discuss about India's diplomatic engagement. Talk about the narrative that India has been trying to set. You can even highlight the shortcomings. India was criticized for failing to control the narrative as Pakistan got a better narrative built, particularly in Western media, whereas India's narrative was largely sidelined. And there have been a lot of question marks as well regarding the losses that were suffered by Indian forces, including the alleged losses of fighter jets. To try to bring that angle so that you can show that your answer is more balanced, and then conclude your answer. Conclude by stating that this reflects a new approach of India. It's a clear paradigm shift, a new policy of mixing hard power with diplomatic and economic options to ensure that we retaliate against state sponsored terrorism and deter Pakistan from sponsoring future attacks against India. To try to bring that in the conclusion again, basically, your introduction, your conclusion will almost be quite similar. At least the viewpoint would be similar. That's when logical flow of thought would be maintained. In the body, you present all the details, substantiate your arguments. But introduction and conclusion, the line of thought should be the same. You can't contradict yourself from the introduction to conclusion. So now you can go through the model answer once I share the PPT with you, or you can take a screenshot as well. I've given a model answer over here in the next two slides. So use this, go through this once, just see how you can build such answers and try to practice your answer writing. Now let's look at the next topic, the China-Pakistan nexus, which has become a major threat for India. And this was very evident during Operation Sindoor. So this topic could also come as a separate question. So let's understand, what is this China-Pakistan nexus? In fact, there is a history behind it, not something new. As they say in international relations, enemy is a friend. For both China Pakistan, India was a hostile neighbor since 1950s, 1960s. So after the wars of India Pakistan, India China, it was natural for China Pakistan to come together, and they formed a strategic nexus against India starting from 1963 when they signed the Sino-Pak border agreement, through which Pakistan gave away the Shaksgam Valley, the strategic Shaksgam Valley, which was part of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, was leased to China, and even today China maintains control over Shaksgam Valley. China has deployed troops and built infrastructure at Shaksgam Valley. Even its Belt and Road Initiative, the CPEC corridor, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, passes through POK and Shaksgam Valley. This is Indian territory, which is under the illegal occupation of Pakistan, and Pakistan has ceded this territory to China. And China started enabling the military modernization of Pakistan. Right from 1960s, China has been the key supplier of arms, weapons, ammunition, and the latest defense technology. Pakistan's ballistic missile program and even its nuclear weapons program is entirely a copy paste of China's designs. China has leaked nuclear secrets. It has supplied the required material, the technology as well, and enabled Pakistan to become a formidable buffer against India. So China is using Pakistan as a proxy. So that angle you have to bring in if there is a question on this point. You can mention the kind of military hardware that Pakistan has procured from China. You can refer to the JF-17 fighter jet aircraft, the J-10 Thunder fighter jets as well. The ballistic missile technology which China has transferred, which allows Pakistan to deliver nuclear weapons. And even the diplomatic support is something you have to mention. Whenever India tries to corner Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism, China always gives the shield and protection for Pakistan. For example, at the UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee, when India tries to designate Pakistan based terrorists as global terrorists, China uses its presence in the Sanctions Committee to block those proposals to protect Pakistan. For example, when India tried designating Masood Azhar, the founder of Jaish-e-Mohammed, for many years China kept blocking India's attempts. It was only after Pulwama attacks that China lifted the block. But even today, China is placing a hold on several terrorist names that India is pushing for designation by the Sanctions Committee. On the Kashmir issue as well, when Pakistan tries to internationalize the Kashmir issue at the UN and other global platforms, China constantly gives that diplomatic backing and support. When India revoked the special status under Article 370 and reorganized J&K, Pakistan brought this issue up, which is an internal matter of India, at platforms like UN, and China was always backing Pakistan. So try to bring this aspect into the answer if there's a question related to this. You have to mention Chinese investments and how China has been the economic backbone of Pakistan. You have to mention Pakistan's economic crisis, how China has been constantly investing and funding in the country, and through Belt and Road Initiative, China has built roadways, railway lines, and the strategic Gwadar port in Balochistan facing the Arabian Sea. And this allows China to directly access the Persian Gulf without depending on the Malacca Strait, without having to pass through Indian Ocean. China can directly access the Persian Gulf. And this has great strategic advantage for China. So both these neighbors are colluding together to corner India, to target India, to isolate India. This is where the fear of a two front war comes up. The possibility of a simultaneous war with China Pakistan across the western, northern, and eastern front. So, this has been the worst case scenario for India. India has always been trying to prepare for a possible two front scenario where we may have to simultaneously fight China Pakistan across multiple fronts. This, in a way, came true during Operation Sindoor. See, our strategic planners always thought that our worst case scenario is both China Pakistan attacking us simultaneously through a overt war. In fact, some experts even called it a two and a half front war, as they would add terrorism into this mix as well. They would say China Pakistan might probably open a simultaneous front with India while using terrorism to weaken and bleed India. And they would refer to this threat as a two and a half front threat. But during Operation Sindoor, we saw a sort of collusion between China Pakistan, which has really shocked India. Something unexpected happened. China was present in the battlefield during Operation Sindoor. China was right there fighting a war with India, but not directly, but mainly through Pakistan, enabling Pakistan in the battlefield, giving tactical support, providing active military assistance during wartime. See, supply of weapons is still fine. Even India gets weapons from US, Russia, and others. So Pakistan getting weapons from China is still something we can manage. But China being present in the battlefield during a conflict and actively helping Pakistan from behind the scenes is something that was not really anticipated by India's strategic establishment. So this has really taken India by shock, by surprise. Experts are calling it the one front reinforced war, meaning the war might just be with one front, with just Pakistan. But in such a India Pakistan conflict, there might be China behind the scenes reinforcing the Pakistani front. China may not directly attack India. China is not so foolish to open a new front and risk a bigger war. But it might be present in the battlefield, it might be invisible to us, not in an overt manner, but behind the scenes, it might be actively reinforcing the Pakistani front. And this creates a new kind of challenge for India. For example, according to reports which have been confirmed by Indian Armed Forces and as well as our intelligence establishment, China was actively passing on intelligence during Operation Sindhu. China was using its satellites, drones, and aircraft which can collect aerial intelligence and actively passing on the information to Pakistan, thereby allowing Pakistan a better visibility of India's troop movements and India's planning. China reportedly engaged in active electronic warfare to disrupt Indian military communication during Operation Sindhu. There were reports of Chinese military and intelligence agencies trying to intercept Indian strategic communication during Operation Sindhu, and as well as trying to interfere with the missiles and drones that were launched by India. China was actively identifying India's air defense sites and passing on this crucial tactical battlefield information to Pakistan, which allowed Pakistan to be better prepared. Now, this is something that India should anticipate going forward as well. Because, see, China is doing this all across our neighborhood. It has already tried encircling India in the Indian Ocean, be it in Bangladesh, in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives. It has already built up its economic, diplomatic, and military presence and influence. This is not a surprise as such. It's just that India was not prepared for it, or we didn't anticipate this to happen at this scale. There is clear support in terms of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. China was present in Operation Sindoor, providing ISR support, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, engaging in electronic warfare, There have been reports of even China engaging in cyber warfare, cyber espionage, and as well as in aiding Pakistan's information warfare as part of the Psy war campaign against India to shape the narrative during Operation Sindoor. When Pakistani social media was busy spreading fake news and misinformation, China was amplifying this Pakistani narrative. Chinese social media was actively involved in amplifying Pakistan's version of the story. Now, this is nothing but a case of psychological warfare, Psy war, which includes information warfare. So, this is a threat that India should be prepared for in the coming days. And what India can do is build up its own military capabilities, better intelligence gathering against China to track Chinese involvement in real time. If at all China is reinforcing the Pakistani front during a conflict, we should know about it so that we can take counter steps and countermeasures. We should have included this into our plans to deter China as well. India should use economic and military options to deter China in the future. We should threaten China with cutting off trade or push for proactive forward deployments towards the Chinese front if China decides to get involved in an India Pakistan conflict in the future. So we need to inculcate this into our military planning, into our diplomatic strategy as well, and into India's strategic planning. We need to partner with other like minded countries, Japan, Australia, United States, or Vietnam, Philippines. If China can encircle India, so can India try and encircle China as well. Use Vietnam, Philippines as proxies, or even consider establishing ties with Taiwan. These options will have to be considered. Or India could even play a bigger role in Tibetan politics, especially with regard to the succession plan of the Dalai Lama, which is also in the news. The incumbent Dalai Lama has announced that his successor would be chosen by his own trust, the Gaden Fodang Trust based out of Dharamshala, where India has settled the Tibetan refugees and allowed a parallel Tibetan administration. But China rejects these claims and China says it will decide upon the future Dalai Lama. So you can bring in all these arguments, suggest these possibilities for India as to how India can push China back and try to break this nexus between China and Pakistan. So this is one more topic where you can definitely anticipate a question. Critically examine the evolving China-Pak strategic partnership, its implications for our security and foreign policy choices. So there are three parts in this question. First is the strategic partnership, the nexus between the two countries, the implications on our security, the second part, and third part are foreign policy choices that are available to counter this nexus. To start the answer by defining this nexus, explain what kind of nexus do they have. Maybe briefly talk about the history of the nexus in a couple of lines. Talk about the economic, military, diplomatic collusion between China and Pakistan. How China has been using Pakistan as a proxy against India. And then in the body, provide the details. Provide specific details as to what kind of Chinese support is Pakistan enjoying. So try to break this down and explain the implications for India, the security implications, strategic foreign policy implications, how we might witness a one front reinforced war or two front war remains a possibility in the future as well. If India is trying to weaponize Indus waters and corner Pakistan, what if China tries to weaponize Brahmaputra as a counter strategy to shield Pakistan? Experts believe this is what is happening right now with China's announcement of the world's largest dam on the Yarlung Sangpo. Some experts are predicting that this could be a possible deliberate counter by China to bring that pressure on India. As India has said, we will not abide with the commitments of Indus Water Treaty, that India would seek to punish Pakistan by weaponizing water. Given this approach of India, China might be resorting to this tactic where it is trying to shield Pakistan by creating a leverage against India by weaponizing the Brahmaputra waters. So try to bring all these angles and dimensions, highlighting the threat, the security strategic threats for India. And then the response. What can India do? What choices does India have? right? We have to step up our own military capabilities, step up the diplomatic pressure on China, and we need to form partnerships with other like minded countries. We need to ensure that we have counter strategies in place in the coming days to deal with Chinese involvement in a conflict with Pakistan. So try to present those choices, 3, 4 points about this, and conclude your answer. I've given a reference statement here, which you can use for your conclusion, or you can refer to the model answer as well. I've given a detailed model answer in these two slides. So take the PDF or the screenshots and please keep these answers ready. Maybe make one-page notes based on what we are discussing so that at the last minute you can quickly revise these topics before the exam. So I hope the first two topics are clear. Now let's look at the next topic, Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. A related topic, but we have to discuss this separately. The provisions of Indus Water Treaty, the significance of India deciding to keep the treaty in abeyance, and the long-term implications. So let's do this very quickly. Now that you already have the background, we can quickly cover this topic. The Indus Basin is what we share with Pakistan. It's a shared water resource. There are 6 major rivers: Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj. In 1960, India agreed to a water sharing treaty with Pakistan as a goodwill gesture. This treaty was mediated by the World Bank, as Pakistan was the downstream country in the lower riparian of the Indus Basin. It was at a natural disadvantage. Given the hostile relations between the two over the Kashmir issue and the war that both countries had fought, Pakistan was worried that India could weaponize the water and misuse the control it has on the upstream of the Indus Basin. But India had no such intention. We never wanted to weaponize water or punish the people of Pakistan. So India agreed for a treaty, a water sharing arrangement mediated by the World Bank. And this treaty divided the Indus Basin into western and eastern rivers. Indus, Jhelum, Chenab classified as the western rivers, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj classified as the eastern rivers. Now, Pakistan got control over most of the western rivers, meaning India can't divert the flow of these waters, can't block the flow of Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. India has been given limited usage over the western waters. We can build run of the river projects like hydro plants, which will not stop the water flow or divert the water flow. We can just generate hydropower and allow the river to continue to flow into Pakistan. And we can ensure that the local consumptive needs can be met. Local needs for irrigation, drinking water can be met. But rest of the water, majority of it is allocated to Pakistan, the majority share. Meaning we can't really take full advantage of these rivers. Our rights over the western rivers is very restricted, very limited, and we only have limited usage rights. Any projects we plan, like hydro projects such as Baglihar, Kishan Ganga, Ratle, those designs have to be approved by Pakistan as well, meaning we have to share that with Pakistan. So every year under the treaty, Indus water commissioners of two countries would meet under the permanent Indus Commission, exchange the data, hydrological data as well, to jointly control and manage the floods and drought situation in the region. So this is a treaty which we have always remained committed to. Though the treaty allocated almost 80% of the waters to Pakistan, it was largely beneficial to Pakistan. India always remained committed because we have a respect for the commitments we make, the international rules and laws. India abides by that. Whereas eastern rivers has been largely assigned for India over Ravi, Beas, and Satluj. India can build all sorts of projects for irrigation, drinking water, industrial usage, and for hydropower generation. We can even divert part of the water, build permanent dam structures, and these rivers are the lifeline of Punjab, Haryana, and the northwestern belt of India, which is the agrarian belt of India. Despite repeated provocations, India has always decided to remain committed to this treaty. During Mumbai attacks, during Uri, Pulwama attacks, there have been debates in India, within the government, in the media, in the strategic establishment. Should we weaponize the Indus Water Treaty? But until Pahalgam attack, India had decided not to weaponize water because this would send out the wrong message. We don't want to alienate the people of Pakistan, the innocent civilians in Pakistan. India never wanted to play with the human rights and the the essential livelihood of Pakistani farmers and civilians. Almost 90% of Pakistan's irrigation is dependent on Indus Basin. Pakistan's agriculture will collapse if the waters of Indus Jhelum Chenab is stopped or diverted by India. So India had consciously chosen, decided before that we will not weaponize this, we will not play geopolitics with water. It's a question of human rights. But now, Pahalgam attack has changed everything. India has done the unthinkable. India has decided to keep the treaty in abeyance, meaning we will not follow the commitments we have made. We are not exiting. There is no exit clause. You can't exit the treaty. There is no exit provision at all. So we are pausing our commitment, meaning we will not share hydrological data. We will not hold the meetings of Indus water commissioners. We will not share the designs of our projects. We will not allow Pakistani officials to inspect our plants and our facilities and projects. And going forward, India will try to fully utilize the allocated share. And maybe we will try to utilize all the waters that are available as well if necessary. India has already started desilting the dams in order to increase the storage capacity so that we can store more water on the Indian side, which is likely to affect water flow into Pakistan. So this sends out a very strong message to Pakistan, and Pakistan has threatened to retaliate against India if India wages a water war. Now, this indeed has very, very serious implications, as millions of people in both countries are dependent on the Indus Basin. So, this is where you need to understand the rationale of India. Is it justified? See, in the answer, of course, you have to support the stand of the government of India. Because India has shown enough patience. We have always been restrained. We have shown that strategic restraint. We have respected the Indus Water Treaty despite grave provocations, despite repeated wars, despite repeated attacks against India. We've always been committed to the Indus Water Treaty. But now, according to India, a red line has been crossed. Pahalgam attack was that red line, and India has decided that Pakistan should pay the price for this. Even if it means punishing Pakistani farmers and taking a hit at Pakistan's agriculture, India has decided to go ahead, and we have to wait and watch whether India will actually remain committed to this declaration that uh, we will not follow the commitments of the treaty. We'll keep it in abeyance. Will India do it forever? Or if, let's say, things improve in the coming months, will we, seek to come back and go back to the previous arrangement? But one thing is very clear: this raises global scrutiny as well. Because when you weaponize water, as I said, it's a question of survival. It's a basic need. It's a human right. So this will bring more international scrutiny. It could bring unnecessary global diplomatic pressure as well, which is something India would like to avoid. India's global image and standing might also take a hit. So that could be one of the shortcomings. Then, as I said, China Pakistan nexus is very much active. If India tries to play with Indus waters, China might leverage its control over Brahmaputra, the Yarlung Sangpo. China has already built multiple dams, the upper reaches of Yarlung Sangpo in Tibet. Now, recently, it has proposed the world's largest dam, and the construction has started in Medok County near the Great Bend at Namcha Barwa, right before Yarlung Sangpo enters into Arunachal Pradesh. Now, China might help Pakistan in this regard, create that pressure against India. So, the question is India prepared for such escalations? So, there are many risk factors associated with this policy decision, but you need to support and back the stand of the government of India while highlighting the risks that are present. Under international law as well, this could be seen as a breach of international commitments. So you need to present that criticism, the critical view, while pointing out why this could be a weapon for India to punish Pakistan and to push Pakistan away from sponsoring terrorism. So if you are able to bring out these assessments, you should be able to answer any question based on this topic. Look at this practice question. Evaluate the implications of India's decision to suspend the Indus Water Treaty in response to Pahalgam terror attack. Discuss the strategic, legal, and diplomatic dimensions of the move. So, very simple question. This is actually pretty straightforward. So, you can start your answer first by setting the context. You can explain why the topic is in news, or you can even give a brief outline of Indus Water Treaty, the history behind it, and why it is currently in news. Because India has decided to keep it in abeyance following the Pahalgam attack. This is part of India's course of diplomacy. Then, in the body, discuss this one by one. The strategic dimension, legal and diplomatic dimension, and the reference points have already been added over here. And conclude the answer by calling upon India to ensure that our approach towards this sensitive issue is more balanced. We have to think of the implications, the global response, possible China Pakistan collusion, and how China might try to create leverage over Brahmaputra. Right? You need to bring that out in the conclusion. Mention that there are risk factors present for India. We need to keep this in mind. The possible long term implications for the region and Indian interests. So try to bring in a critical assessment in the conclusion. So please go through the model answer based on what we have discussed. All the key points are included with a proper structure in the answer. You can try to use this, try to replicate these answers. And as I'm urging you, please make one page notes for all these topics. Note down all the key pointers in the right structure, and your answers are almost ready. So, any question, you'll be able to answer them. Now, coming to India China relations. This again is a very important topic which has been in the news. The border tensions, particularly in Ladakh. Last year, India resolved the border tensions at the Kazan BRICS summit in Russia. After nearly 4 years of tense military standoff in Ladakh, both countries have managed to de escalate and disengage from the military standoff in Ladakh. And they're trying to bring back some normalcy in the relationship. There are talks of bringing back the regional cooperation between India and China. There are talks of scaling up the economic ties. India has recently opened up again to attract more Chinese investments. We would like to step up our economic ties and China's involvement in the Indian economy, as China is a critical trade partner for India. So there is some sense of normalcy that you get to see in the last few months following the Kazan BRICS summit last year in Russia, where India China managed to de escalate from the standoff in Ladakh. Now, this topic is going to be very, very crucial. So, let's quickly understand what happened at the Kazan summit, what was the outcome, and what is the future prospect for India China relationship. See, apart from all the tensions and hostility that we have, there are many areas where India China can work together. Take, for example, the trade war of Donald Trump. Now, this is where India China have a common interest to counter the US, to counter the erratic policies of Donald Trump. So, there are plenty of opportunities for India China to collaborate. We might be hostile, we might have standing border issues, we might even have concerns about China's collusion with Pakistan. There are multiple security threats that emanate from China, but still, there are opportunities for collaboration as well. Now, if you look at the Ladakh crisis that broke out in 2020, the Chinese incursions in Ladakh at multiple locations is what led to the standoff. It eventually led to the Galwan River Valley clashes, where many soldiers were killed on both sides. 20 Indian soldiers were martyred at Galwan River Valley in 2020. Now, this was the biggest escalation since the 1962 war. This standoff was primarily seen at Galwan River Valley, right across the line of actual control, which is the temporary de facto border in the Ladakh sector. The standoff was seen at Hot Springs area as well, at the famous Panongso Lake, and as well as at Depsang Plains and Demchok. These were the five primary flashpoints where the military standoff had occurred and some clashes also had taken place. But over the last 4 years, by using the boundary mechanisms between India and China, we managed to hold frequent talks between military commanders. We managed to arrive at a settlement and we de escalated the crisis at three locations out of these five: at the Panongso Lake, both at the north and south bank of Panongso Lake, at Galwan River Valley, and as well as at Hot Springs area. At these three flashpoints, India China achieved a de escalation and they fully disengaged the troops and they even de inducted the troops, meaning they pulled back the troop presence and restored normalcy and brought back normal patrolling at these flashpoints. But however, the standoff continued at Demchok and Depsang Plain for many more months. In fact, by 2022 itself, these three flashpoints were resolved. Panongso, Galwan, and Hot Springs. The standoff here was resolved by the end of 2022 itself. So, for nearly 2 more years, the standoff continued at Demchok and Depsang Plains. And this final standoff has also been resolved at last year's Kazan summit of the BRICS countries. India China were in touch with each other at the highest level. See, we have few boundary agreements, such as the 1993 Peace and Tranquility Agreement along the line of actual control, signed during the Narasimha Rao era under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. In 1996, both countries had signed an agreement on confidence building measures along the line of actual control, CBMs. These agreements were designed to diffuse tensions and it created protocols to be followed during a crisis, during such incursions and escalations, so that immediate talks can be opened between local military commanders and senior military commanders who can talk to each other between Indian Army and the Chinese PLA and quickly arrive at a resolution so that a small escalation doesn't turn into a bigger conflict. In 2014, another boundary agreement was signed to help maintain normalcy between India and China along the disputed border. In 2003, India China even started the special representative mechanism to find a political solution for the boundary dispute. From 2003 to 2009, multiple rounds of SR talks were held between the special representative of India and China. India appointed the National Security Advisor, the NSA, as a special representative. China appointed the state counselor. These two special representatives met several times from 2003 to 2009 to try and work out a political solution, to find those political parameters to resolve the military standoff and the boundary issues that we have along the line of actual control. Basically, to demarcate a final border and create an international border to end the dispute permanently. But these talks have not progressed after 2009 because China has gotten unnecessarily aggressive against India since 2009, especially after India got closer to United States. After the India-US nuclear deal, after India's growing defense and security ties with US, China got increasingly aggressive against India, and since then SR talks have almost come to a halt. The SR mechanism was reactivated during the Ladakh crisis in 2020 after the Galwan clashes. But that was only to diffuse the tensions. But now, at Kazan summit, India China have decided to resume and restart the SR dialogue. They have not only de escalated from the remaining flashpoints at Demchok and Depsang Plain, they have resumed normal patrolling. Normal patrolling has been resumed. The troops on both sides have been de inducted, they've been pulled back, disengaged, and they've been de inducted as well. And normal patrolling has resumed in these areas. So now India China have agreed to bring back the SR talks, which is very, very significant, which means they are genuinely seeking to try and repair the relationship and try to address the pressing question in the relationship, which is the boundary issue between India and China. Now, you need to understand that at the end of this month, at the end of August, China will be holding the SCO summit. China will be hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, and PM Modi will be participating. This will be the first time PM Modi will be visiting China ever since the Ladakh standoff. That itself is a very significant development. In fact, just few weeks ago, Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, visited China to prepare for the upcoming SCO summit. This was the first visit by India's foreign minister by a high ranking Indian official to China since 2020, since the Ladakh crisis. So the signs are there that maybe India China might start working together, some normalcy might come back. Now, especially that US has become a challenge not just for Russia, China, but for India as well. Trump's policies is creating new challenges, new trouble for India, which might push India closer to China and, of course, even closer to Russia as well. So, you might be witnessing a reorientation of India's foreign policy in the coming months. That's why this topic is so important. So, you can discuss both sides of the story over here. On one hand, India China are hostile, right? Even though we are seeking good relations, on the other hand, we are still hostile to each other. China keeps backing Pakistan, it keeps building strategic projects to encircle India. It tries to step up its influence and presence in South Asia and Indian Ocean. So that competition, that covert war will continue. But parallelly, we can even maintain friendly, cordial relations as well. That is how diplomatic relations exist. It's very complex. So India has its own counter strategy, be it in Ladakh, be it in Sikkim, in Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, or in Arunachal Pradesh. We are stepping up our border infrastructure to counter China's advanced civilian and military infrastructure in the border regions. India has taken up advanced projects, including the Arunachal Frontier Highway, the strategic Sela Tunnel that provides all weather connectivity was recently inaugurated. This will give us year round access to Tawang and the border areas in Arunachal Pradesh. We are countering China's model village program with vibrant villages program, and we are developing the border villages. India is building strategic roads, bridges, railway lines, tunnels, and even airfields. We're even activating advanced landing grounds. And India has really stepped up its military modernization, from deploying the Rafale fighter jets towards the Chinese front to the BrahMos and S-400 and other critical weapon platforms that we have got from US, France, Russia. They've all been positioned facing the Chinese front. That steps up India's military deterrence as well. So India has taken multiple steps, even to counter China's hydropower projects on the Brahmaputra. India is pushing the Siang upper multi-purpose hydropower project over the Siang River as Yarlung Tsangpo flows into Arunachal Pradesh, which would help India to ensure that we maintain the control of these waters. Later, the Siang would be joined by Lohit and Dibang, and India is confident that there would still be sufficient water flow even if China were to build these mega dams. Even the Medog hydropower dam that China has started building, which is the world's largest hydropower dam, its impact is likely to be very minimal because India has sufficient catchment area in Arunachal Pradesh and Assam to feed the Brahmaputra. Sangpo is one of the streams, but there are other tributaries contributing as well. And we have sufficient catchment area to take care of the needs of India. So India is countering the Chinese presence like a tit for tat move. If China is developing its border villages, so are we. If China is modernizing military infrastructure, so is India. So this allows India to establish that deterrence against Pakistan, reiterate our claims, push back any Chinese intrusions and aggressive claims, while seeking friendly, cordial ties in the economic and diplomatic domain. If we can maintain that balance at the border, if we can maintain that equivalence in diplomacy, in our military might, in our military preparedness, China would also be deterred. And this prevents a possible conflict from occurring while both countries continue to remain hostile covertly. Let the spy games continue, let the covert strategies continue. That will happen on one side, either ways. But on the other hand, it might create an opportunity and an opening for fresh diplomatic ties and economic relations. A reset can be achieved. So there are plenty of opportunities where we can actually work together, be it in the field of climate change or tariff wars of President Trump or raising the voice of the global south, there are plenty of opportunities for India China to collaborate and work together. So, if you're able to understand this complex relationship, the nuances which are part of it, any question you should be able to easily write a good answer for such questions. So, I hope this topic is also clear. Evaluate the recent developments in India China relations, focusing on the resolution of Ladakh standoff and infrastructure initiatives in Arunachal Pradesh. Discuss the implications for regional stability and India's strategic interests. So please look at the structure, the flow, which I have given in the PPT. Start out your answer by introducing a brief context about our border tensions or recent developments like the Ladakh crisis, how we have recently resolved it through Kazan BRICS summit, mention the recent resolution, and point out that India China relationship is very complex. On one hand, we are hostile to each other. China is unnecessarily aggressive against India and it is a hostile threat. At the same time, India China have plenty of opportunities to work together and collaborate with each other. Then, in the body, justify this argument. Talk about the impact of resolution of Ladakh standoff, how this could help in resuming SR talks. Maybe we will see some progress on the border talks. Maybe some normalcy might come back with regard to our economic and diplomatic relations. We might see a reset and explain how India is also being cautious at the same time. We are not blindly believing that China will overnight become our best friend. While we are seeking normal ties as a decent, friendly neighbor, we are on our guard as well. We are cautious as well. We know we can't trust China blindly. We know the hostility will continue, primarily in the covert domain. China Pakistan nexus will continue. China's encirclement will continue. So India has its counter response ready. We are very actively working in the region, building up our economic, diplomatic, and military presence and influence, stepping up our border infrastructure, stepping up our military preparedness. So bring that out in the second part of the body and talk about the implications of this on the stability of the region. And conclude your answer. Summarize everything that has been discussed and point out that we need continued dialogue. We need confidence building measures between both countries, and we need China to be more responsible. China can't behave as a rogue nation. You need to bring that out, mentioning that China is expected here to uphold its end of the deal, its end of the promise which has been made. If China respects the commitments that have been made, India is more than willing, more than happy to partner with China, work with China, because we do have some common interests. So, this is what you need to learn about the India China relations, which have been in the news. Now, please look at the model answer here. Go through the model answer which has been provided. Take a screenshot, or later I'll be sharing the PDF as well. So, you can use this to build your answers for your answer writing practice. Now, let's take up the next topic, the expansion of BRICS and the role of India and the future prospect for BRICS as an organization. This is another very crucial topic which has been in the news. See, the BRICS grouping has seen a significant expansion in the last couple of years. Several new member countries have been added. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE, they have all joined as new members. Even Saudi Arabia and Argentina were invited at the Johannesburg summit in 2023. The BRICS group, which includes the founding members Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, it has been a grouping of all the emerging economies. It has evolved as a platform for pushing the reforms of global financial institutions, particularly the Western dominated Bretton Woods institutions such as the World Bank and IMF, which are dominated by United States and European Union respectively. So these emerging economies primarily came together in 2009 and launched the BRICS summit. Since then, they have been countering the Bretton Woods institutions and the Western dominance on global financial architecture. BRICS has set up counter institutions like NDB, the New Development Bank, to counter the World Bank. BRICS has set up the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, the CRA, to counter the IMF. And now the grouping has grown in its profile. It has diversified the areas of engagement. It's dealing with climate change, counterterrorism, disaster management, science and technology as well, cultural relations, and even global geopolitical developments. So BRICS has almost emerged as a key platform which can be seen as a rival to the G7 that is dominated by Western advanced economies. This is where the relevance of BRICS lies. So BRICS today, with the entry of Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, and then Indonesia also joined this year at the start of 2025. Today it has 10 members. However, Argentina, Saudi Arabia have not joined yet. Argentina has rejected the membership because of the change in government in Argentina. Argentina has tried taking a different path. It has rejected the membership which was offered. But Saudi Arabia has not decided yet. It has not officially joined. It has neither rejected the membership as well. So it's sitting on the fence, trying to be neutral. Because both countries are getting torn between United States and the Russia-China led BRICS alliance. Because countries like Argentina, countries like Saudi Arabia, they are in between here. The previous government in Argentina wanted to be a part of BRICS as the government was a more left aligned government. But with the rise of a far right wing party to power under current Argentinian president Javier Milei, Argentina has clearly sided with the US as Javier Milei happens to be a very good close friend of Donald Trump. So Argentina has rejected BRICS membership. Saudi Arabia has the same dilemma. It's not certain, it's not sure which side to take because it has very important ties with US, with Russia, with China as well. That's why Saudi Arabia has been sitting on the fence, not decided yet whether to join or not. But irrespective of these two countries, BRICS expansion is still a very big and significant development. Indonesia also has joined, one of the major middle economies in the world. And now there are many other countries which have entered as dialogue partners into the organization, which are also seeking full time membership. 8 dialogue partners have been admitted. Countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Thailand, and many others are showing interest to enter the BRICS. They have been given dialogue partner status. And in the coming months, in the coming years, you might see further expansion of the BRICS grouping. Now, this ongoing expansion of BRICS presents many opportunities for India and also creates challenges for India. The opportunity is that BRICS has been a platform for global South cooperation to highlight issues of developing emerging economies, underdeveloped countries, to provide a new counter and new leadership to the Western dominated G7. So, in this regard, a core objective of India's foreign policy gets served by working with BRICS countries. We are all like minded countries when it comes to reforming World Bank and IMF, when it comes to reforming the global financial institutions. These countries are pushing for de dollarization as well to reduce the dependency on the US dollar as the reserve currency. They are pushing for alternate systems of cross border payments, credit rating agencies to transform the global economy entirely. Because right now, much of the global economy and financial architecture is controlled by US and European Union. And BRICS countries, they want to break that dominance, break that monopoly that the Western countries have. So India will have great opportunities to promote multipolarity. India believes in a multipolar world. We believe in multi alignment. We align with different power blocks. And we can use this as a platform for South South cooperation to promote initiatives on, let's say, development assistance, to assist poor countries and underdeveloped nations in their development, to focus on climate change, sustainable development. BRICS is a great platform for all these initiatives. Even technology sharing between developing underdeveloped countries and other development oriented initiatives is something that BRICS has always seen as a priority. But there are many problems and challenges as well. There are many internal contradictions in BRICS, which creates a challenge for India. See, first of all, between the founding members, there is a divide. there is an internal contradiction because Brazil, India, South Africa, the initial members, right? South Africa joined later, of course, in 2010, but it is seen as one of the initial members. These three countries are democracies, whereas Russia, China are authoritarian countries. This is a fundamental difference. And for Russia, China, BRICS is more of a platform to counter the West. They have seen this as an anti-West platform. Both Russia and China have been using BRICS not to build cooperation, not to push any successful initiatives, but rather to use it for countering the West and for anti-West propaganda. Now, this creates uncomfortable choices for India, Brazil, and South Africa because they are close to US and European Union as well. And also, don't forget the India-China tensions, the border conflict. This itself is another contradiction which can tear the group apart. And upon that, if BRICS is expanding, including new members, when countries like Iran, UAE, Egypt, and others are joining, it's again countries which are largely authoritarian which are entering the group. So, India, Brazil, South Africa will be like the odd one out as democracies, and most other members are authoritarian regimes, creating a very big internal contradiction. And as more and more members join the group, decision making might become even more complex. Now, this is what China wants. China wants more members to join BRICS because it can create support and it can use BRICS as a platform for China's propaganda against the West. Same with Russia. The reason why Russia and China are pushing for expansion, approving the membership of such authoritarian countries is all because they are aligned with Russia and China. So then Russia, China will hijack BRICS from being an economic platform and they will turn it into an anti-West propaganda platform. And that does not serve India's purpose. That doesn't work for India's interests. And decision making will become even more harder with more and more members getting added without internal consensus. So these are the challenges that are present in front of BRICS grouping. Though there are opportunities, there are many serious questions about its very survival and effectiveness. That's why many Western experts they dismiss BRICS as a grouping of countries which do not have common interests. So this is where you can anticipate a question. UPSC might ask you, the expansion of BRICS creates opportunities and challenges. Evaluate. BRICS is a platform for India to further its global south outreach, but the internal contradictions can weaken BRICS and take down the organization as well. Right? So such statements can be given where you are asked to present your viewpoints about the future outlook, the future prospects of BRICS. So please be prepared for this topic. There are many recent developments in this regard. So if you understand this critical analysis, this is more than enough. So take up a practice question. In light of the recent expansion of BRICS, critically examine India's evolving role and the strategic interests that we have in the grouping. So you will not only talk about the expansion of the BRICS in the introduction, but in the body, you will discuss the opportunities for India, the role of India, and you will also discuss the challenges. You will critically examine this topic and you will talk about the various challenges that we have, the internal contradictions that are present, and finally conclude your answer as to how India can constructively contribute to this organization and ensure that BRICS remains a relevant platform for India's interests while maintaining our strategic autonomy. Because we don't want to be seen as an ally of Russia. We don't want to be an ally of the US. We want to work with all of them. We want to maintain our independent foreign policy, and BRICS platform is a test for India. So if you're able to understand this, you can easily bring this out in your assessments. So take up the model answer, go through this later and use this for your answer writing practice. Now coming to the next topic, one of the biggest developments of this year, very anticipated topic for your mains exam this time, even for prelims next year, this is a highly anticipated topic. The Free Trade Agreement, the CETA, Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, that was recently signed between India and United Kingdom. I'm sure all of you are aware, Prime Minister Modi traveled to UK met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and we have signed the historic FTA between India and UK. So let's break this down. Let's understand why this is important. What are the key features and provisions? What are the opportunities and what are the shortcomings? What challenges are present? A full analysis and breakdown of this FTA so that if there is a question, you should be able to answer this. Now, please understand why this FTA is significant. India is the fourth largest economy, UK being the sixth largest. So imagine these two economies coming together for a free trade agreement. An FTA seeks to remove the trade barriers, the tariff and non tariff barriers. It will try to create a free trade regime for the free movement of goods, services, and eventually investments is also being considered. India, UK are parallelly negotiating a trade and investment agreement, a bilateral investment agreement as well. Now we have finalized an agreement for trade in goods and services, which will boost the exports of both the countries. It was concluded in May 2025 and it was signed just a few days back, a couple of weeks ago in July 2025. Now, this FTA is expected to nearly double the trade volume between India and Britain. Currently, the bilateral trade stands at roughly around $60 billion approximately as of last year, somewhere between 55 to $60 billion. This is the current trade volume. If you take the total of British exports to India, India's exports to UK, this is the total trade volume. Because of this FTA, which will now come into force, the trade volume is expected to nearly double to 100 billion and more by the end of this decade. Meaning in the next 5 years, we might see a near doubling of the trade volume up to 100 to 120 billion dollars. And this trade agreement is designed to benefit labor intensive sectors in India, to boost India's exports from the labor intensive MSME sector and agriculture sector, which can create millions of jobs in the Indian market. So, sectors like textiles, pharmaceuticals, garments, leather, furniture, gems and jewelry, and key agrarian products, they will benefit as we can access the British market almost with duty free access, boost our exports into the British market, and thus create jobs in India. Britain will also stand to benefit as it can give a big boost for the British economy, increase British exports into the Indian market. And parallelly, we are still negotiating a bilateral trade and investment agreement. See, this agreement is only for goods and services, which has now been finalized. But going forward, we will have a separate agreement, which is still being negotiated, only for investments. A bilateral investment agreement is being negotiated. This is still in negotiations. Because don't forget, Britain is a major investor in India. India is also a major investor in the UK. There are a lot of Indian companies like TCS, Tata Group, and others who have big investments in UK market. Same with UK. The In fact, London itself is a big financial hub. There are massive investments of British origin in the Indian economy, with several British companies having made big investments in our country. There's a lot of transfer of technology as well. So, to facilitate those investments, we are parallelly negotiating a bilateral investment agreement, which is yet to be finalized. Now, what are the advantages of this FTA, the trade agreement that we have signed? What are the key features? What will be the benefits? Through this FTA, India will be giving reduced tariffs for almost 90% of British exports into India. Out of all the British exports, 90% of those goods and services will enjoy reduced tariffs. Almost duty free access will be given in the coming months and years. On the other hand, for India, 99% of our exports into Britain is going to become duty free. This is massive. Eventually, 85% of British exports into India will become duty free in the next decade. By 2035, 85% of what Britain exports to our country will become duty free. So we are protecting only few sensitive sectors like dairy, animal husbandry industry, few sectors in agriculture, MSME sector, they are being protected. So there the tariffs will continue, the higher tariffs. But 85% of British exports will become duty free in another 10 years. 99% of Indian exports will become duty free within few more months. So you can imagine how the trade is going to jump significantly, exponentially, if both countries take the full advantage of this free trade agreement. British whiskey, bourbon, scotch can flood the Indian market, creating a massive opportunity for British alcohol industry. The automobile sector on both sides can benefit. The Indian auto manufacturers who produce small cars and the medium segment cars, they can find a big market in Britain. Whereas from Britain, luxury cars, they can enter the Indian market. The tariffs are being brought down significantly, as you can see here. Our textile exports can jump because see, right now, Indian textiles and garments faces a big competition from competitors like Vietnam, Bangladesh, because they already have reduced tariffs or almost duty free access into these markets. Now, Indian exports in textile and garments will also enjoy better market access. Gems and jewelry will be one of the biggest beneficiaries, as India is a global leader in gems and jewelry sector, in pharmaceuticals as well, in several agricultural products as well. So several exports will see a big boost between both sides. And we have also signed agreements related to social security and the movement of people between the two sides. The visa norms are being simplified for Indian students and workers who have the right qualification and skills. There are provisions to tackle Indian illegal migration because Britain and many developed nations are dealing with a massive problem of illegal migration from India. We have signed a mobility migration partnership agreement for this, which will allow Britain to identify the illegal migrants and deport them back to India while creating a simplified route for Indian students and workers to access the British market. More visas would be available. The process would be simplified. It will promote tourism as well. And a social security agreement will exempt Indian workers for making dual contribution for 3 years. So this will help them increase their savings instead of paying double the contribution for social security, for insurance, pension, etc. They will be exempt from the payments for 3 years, which will help in improving the financial stability of the Indian workers in the UK. So all these provisions are part of this trade agreement. So this steps up the opportunities for economic growth. Experts believe by 2040, roughly in another 2 decades, our trade will start jumping by 30 to 34 billion dollars every year. There is a potential easily for 200 to 300 billion dollar trade relationship between India and UK. And experts believe that we might see a year on year jump of up to 30 billion dollars every single year in another few years. Labor intensive sectors, as I told you, will significantly benefit, creating millions of jobs in the Indian market. And this comes at a very critical time when protectionism, conservative trade policies are increasing especially because of United States and Trump's policies and Trump's trade and tariff wars. This agreement will secure markets for us. I'm sure all of you are aware. Just the other day, Trump has levied up to 50% tariffs on India, which includes a 25% penalty. Clearly, US is targeting India, almost becoming hostile, at least as far as economic relations are concerned. So, securing markets like the British market is critical, which will help us diversify Indian exports. What we might lose in the American market, we can divert to other markets like Britain. We have a trade agreement being negotiated with European Union as well. If that is finalized, we will have better access into European market. Last year, we have signed a FTA with the EFTA countries, the European Free Trade Association, the EFTA, which includes Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. We have signed a separate FTA with these four European nations. Now we have a FTA with UK. So two back-to-back FTAs we have signed with European countries and groups. And now we have another coming up with European Union, which might happen sometime soon. So this will diversify our exports, find new markets for us, and we can minimize the impact of Trump's policies against India. So that is the big advantage. And this will benefit our domestic industry, our MSME sector, agriculture sector, right? You can mention those industries which are going to benefit. There will be transfer of technology, flow of investment if bilateral investment agreement is also finalized. But however, there are some challenges, some concerns as well. See, Britain is considering a carbon tax on those products which are being imported based on their emissions. It's similar to what the European Union is also considering. Both Britain and UK, that is Britain and European Union, right? They both are considering a carbon border adjustment mechanism. So they are looking to place a carbon tax on certain imports, which would have contributed to emissions in the home country from where it has been produced and exported. Now, this can become a new type of trade barrier. European Union and Britain believe that this is an environmental policy for climate action to minimize emissions and penalize those who are responsible for emissions. But this will become a trade barrier because a developing nation like India, in sectors like steel, fertilizers, chemicals, etc., we can't follow the strict emission standards. And this would be outside of the climate change convention. So India is opposing this, but the issue still remains. We have not resolved as to how we will be handling the carbon border adjustment mechanism that UK is also trying to bring in, similar to how European Union is considering a similar carbon tax. There is concern about public health because almost duty-free access is being given to ultra-processed food. I'm sure all of you are aware Western food culture is driven by ultra processed food, which is very high in sugar, salt, and fat content. And the flood of ultra processed food products from British market could increase the health risks in India. India is already so prone to diabetes, obesity, hypertension, etc. And the flood of such ultra processed food is something that raises health concerns. Then certain sectors are very vulnerable, as we discussed. MSME sector, the small micro enterprises especially, right, in engineering, goods, in medical devices industry, gems and jewelry, they may not be able to compete with the higher productivity, better technology of British companies. India's agrarian sector, India's farmers, the animal husbandry, dairy, meat industry, they may not be able to compete as well with the superior quality of the British and European products. So these issues are still present, though India has secured them. India has sought protection for these sensitive sectors. There is a risk of some of the goods entering and flooding the market. And experts believe there are some loopholes which could be exploited. Then, when it comes to IPR, intellectual property rights, especially with regard to patented medicines, India has agreed for a dilution. Previously, we would always insist on compulsory licensing. That's recognized by WTO as well, where Indian government can issue a compulsory license to a generic drug company to produce patented drugs to make drugs affordable. But in this FTA, we have agreed for voluntary licensing instead of compulsory licensing. Meaning Indian government will not issue the license. Rather, an Indian pharma company will have to strike a deal with a British pharma company, get a voluntary license and pay royalties to them. So the price of these generic drugs would still be expensive, and it raises questions about affordability of essential drugs and life-saving drugs. So this appears to be a compromise India has made when it comes to intellectual property rights. There are unresolved issues, as I told you, regarding the upcoming bilateral investment agreement. We are still negotiating it, but there are many issues on labor standards, environmental norms. We are not agreeing on these terms. So there is no clarity whether this investment treaty will happen or not. And finally, the overall market concerns. Whenever FTAs are signed, though some sectors will celebrate it, in general, the markets will be wary as well because they don't know how exactly the FTA will come into implementation, what would be the long term implications. That is something that causes a lot of uncertainty in the market as well. Now, going forward, we need to ensure that there is a proper monitoring mechanism. Whatever commitments have been made, they should be implemented. There should be a regular interaction to review the progress of the FTA. If these steps are taken, then this trade agreement can be mutually beneficial. There should be a monitoring mechanism addressing sector specific concerns. Let's say there is a sudden flood of cheap imports or superior quality imports. There should be a mechanism to create some protection for sensitive sectors. Then how these benefits will be implemented, the tariff non-tariff barriers, how will they be eliminated, will it be really enforced eventually, what will be the legal and regulatory challenges we might face, what will be the long-term implications of this trade agreement, some of the undesired outcomes which we may not have anticipated as of now. This is something we should address through periodic review, and there should be regular engagement between both sides, and a monitoring mechanism should be there. So this you can suggest as a way forward, as your own suggestion. You can provide this at the end of the answer. Now look at the question. Critically examine the significance of India UK FTA signed in 2025 in the context of India's economic and strategic interests. So start your answer by pointing out the recent FTA between India UK and highlight its transformative potential. How after Brexit, after UK exited the European Union, both India and UK were very eager for a separate FTA. Now that dream has finally been realized. So mention something like this and then talk about the provisions and opportunities present through this trade agreement. Discuss the economic strategic implications. This has to be the first focus of your body. Give the details, which sectors will benefit, what will India gain, what will Britain gain. Maybe you can even create a table, compare the benefits for India, the benefits for UK. List out how the trade volume can increase, what will be the impact on jobs. Bring out all the positive features and then discuss the challenges, the concerns, and conclude the answer. Give a balanced assessment always in the conclusion, slightly optimistic. You can take a critical viewpoint, but there should be some balance in the answer, right? You need to evaluate the positive provisions and opportunities, at the same time highlight the shortcomings and give a critical assessment as well. That is what makes for a good structured balanced answer. Now let's look at another question and another topic. You can later take down the model answer, take a screenshot, or you can use the PDF that I'll be sharing on my Telegram channel. So this would be the model answer for this question. Now let's look at the next topic, India Maldives. According to me, this is another very crucial topic from the neighborhood and the Indian Ocean region. There have been some big developments in this relationship, so UPSC might definitely focus on this one. Recently, there has been a diplomatic strain, the bilateral ties, and we have managed to address the concerns and we have seen a revival of the relationship. India Maldives have managed to achieve a revival of the relationship in recent days. So this is going to be the focus of this particular topic. So a couple of years ago in 2023, Maldives went through a fresh round of elections. Until then, Maldives had a pro-India government. The Maldivian Democratic Party was in power from 2018 to 2023 under the then President Ibrahim Soleh. Ibrahim Soleh was always a pro-India leader. He put India first. In fact, he had reiterated the India first policy of Maldives. It would always give number one priority for India. Things were going very well for us. We had managed to counter the Chinese influence and build back our presence in Maldives. We even took up several big projects, strategic projects in Maldives during this period. But everything was turned upside down in 2023 when Mohammad Muizu won the election and became the new president. This new coalition government primarily won the election on the India Out campaign. If MDP and Ibrahim Soleh were pushing India first, Mohammad Muizu and other anti-India leaders such as Yamin Gayoom, they have always pushed for India out, meaning they want India's presence to be kicked out of Maldives. They've opposed the deployment of Indian military troops and the Indian military equipment, even Indian projects and investments. They blame the problems of Maldives on India. They allege India is interfering in Maldives all the time. These anti India leaders and anti India parties and governments have been a problem as they are largely funded by China. It's very, very evident that leaders like Moizu, leaders like Yamin Gayoom, They have always shared proximity with China and even close linkages with Pakistan. So the moment Mohammad Muizu came to power on the India Out campaign, he started trying to implement this. He demanded India to take back the troops and the military equipment we had gifted. You see, please understand, Maldives is a strategic location in the Indian Ocean. A set of small atolls, small islands spread out across the Indian Ocean, and it lies in the middle of important trade routes that connects the west and the east. And whatever happens in Maldives will have direct impact on India, especially adverse security developments could have a negative impact on India. Historically, India has been the most influential power in Maldives, right from its independence from 1965 until 2012. India has always been the most influential power. But it was only after 2012 we saw the anti India developments happening with the entry of China into Maldives. From 2012 to 2018, we saw the rise of anti India policies under Yamin Gayoom, who was a pro China leader. So, when MDP won the election in 2018 and Ibrahim Soleh had restored India First policy, the pro India policy, this was a big welcome development for India. But now, with Mohammad Muizu and his political ideology of India out, the problems were back. Instead of visiting India first, he visited Turkey, he visited China, he visited Pakistan as well, signed important defense and economic deals. Mohammad Muizu is now procuring weapons such as Bayraktar drones from Turkey, which has been hostile to India. As you know, Turkey has been backing Pakistan on India's internal issues and meddling with India's internal matters. Muizu visited China as well, signed a trade agreement and a defense agreement. So this creates new challenges for us. And then came the controversy over Lakshadweep. When PM Modi visited Lakshadweep, there was a lot of social media hatred in Maldives, including from Maldivian ministers targeting PM Modi and Indians on racist lines. This outraged Indian social media users and led to a campaign, hashtag boycott Maldives, which significantly increased the tensions between two countries. Later, Maldives apologized, suspended those ministers as well. But the damage had been done. Indians were cancelling their plans to visit Maldives. Maldivian economy took a massive hit. And please understand, such a small island nation has a limited economy, depends heavily on tourism. So, with the crash of tourism, which was just recovering from COVID-19 lockdowns, Maldivian economy further fell into a crisis. And that was the opportunity for India. Despite few months of hostility with Mohammad Muizu and his anti-India rhetoric, there was an opportunity that got created, and India immediately latched onto the opportunity. The Indian government did not react emotionally. It was largely Indian public, Indian social media that got outraged and started trending hashtag boycott Maldives. But that would never help India, that would rather help China. If Indian tourists don't go to Maldives, then Chinese tourists will fill the vacuum and China will become more important for Maldives, which will reduce our influence and our presence. So India managed to step in again, in line with our neighborhood first vision and the Sagar Mahasagar doctrine. And we helped the Maldivian economy. And since last year, we have been carefully repairing this relationship and rebuilding the ties. We respected Mohammad Muizu's demand. India withdrew all the military personnel who were deployed to maintain the aircraft and helicopters we had gifted. But we convinced Mohammad Muizu to keep the military equipment as it is helping Maldives. India has gifted the Dornier planes, the Dhruv helicopters, which are used for aerial surveillance and reconnaissance to protect the exclusive economic zone of Maldives. It's used for civilian evacuation, search and rescue missions as well. So India convinced Maldives to keep the equipment, but we withdrew the military personnel and we have replaced them with civilian personnel from HAL to maintain the equipment. And India jumped in with economic support to back the Maldivian economy, which was facing a fresh crisis. Following this, India's foreign minister visited the country last year. Mohammad Muizu also visited India, and just 10 days ago, last week of July, Prime Minister Modi also carried out a historic visit to Maldives. So we are seeing a full turnaround in this relationship. That is why this topic is so important. Though there were signs of tensions and hostility and damage had been done because of Muizu's policies. India's careful diplomacy, our mature approach, has yielded the right results for India. So when it mattered, India stepped in. Without keeping any grudges, we helped the country, supported Maldives, and we have managed to turn Mohammad Muizu around. His approach towards India has been turned around. So apart from this, India has its countermeasures in the Indian Ocean to counter China. We have recently set up INS Jatayu, a new naval base on Minicoy Island in Lakshadweep that steps up our maritime and strategic military presence. We have funded a $500 million connectivity project, the Greater Malay Connectivity Project. India has pumped $500 million into this mega project, which is linking four important islands through a sea bridge. This will improve connectivity in Maldives significantly and counters China's Belt and Road Initiative. If China built the Sinamale Bridge, now India is countering with the Greater Malay Connectivity Project by linking four key islands through a mega sea bridge that we are executing. It's almost nearing completion. Now, despite Muizu's closeness to China, Pakistan, and Turkey, India has managed to create a space for itself, and this is the effective counter strategy of India. We have extended further cooperation in maritime security, defense, and more importantly, the economic support is what really pulled Maldives back into India's sphere of influence. During PM Modi's visit, we have announced a fresh line of credit, a concessional loan amounting to 4,850 crores. India has given concessions on the debt repayment. We have relaxed the repayment provisions, which allows Maldives to breathe during the liquidity crisis it is facing. Instead of extracting the debt repayment, we are essentially reducing the repayment burden to help Maldives escape from the debt trap, the debt burden. And we have launched negotiations for a FTA with Maldives. Now, this is very, very important because China already has a FTA which was signed in 2017. China has already signed a FTA with Maldives. So India Maldives have now agreed to start the talks for a FTA. So this is another important upcoming FTA. And we have inaugurated and set up several developmental projects. We have built houses. We have invested in high impact community projects. We have built roads, maintained the drainage and sewage lines. We are supplying essential items, including medical supplies, food items, fuel. We have gifted the Bhishma tube sets, which are these self contained medical tents, which can be used for uh, health and emergency services during disasters and during contingencies. So India has provided a lot of developmental support to Maldives, and this shows that our presence, our influence is growing back. This is the transformation that you get to see in the relationship. In fact, we have even proposed the introduction of India's UPI. India's digital payment platform UPI would be rolled out very soon in Maldives. UPI right now is already available in Sri Lanka, in France, in UAE, even in Nepal and Bhutan and Singapore. And now we are expanding this to many other countries. So please note down why this transformation is important, how this reflects the success of our neighborhood first policy and the Mahasagar doctrine. Mahasagar is the upgraded version of Sagar that was recently announced by PM Modi. When PM Modi visited Mauritius few months ago, PM Modi announced the transformation of Sagar into Mahasagar. Sagar stood for security and growth for all in the region, under which India was guaranteeing security and growth opportunities for every country. Now, under Mahasagar, we have expanded that vision. We are promising mutual and holistic advancement for security and growth for all in the region. And it covers not just the Indian Ocean region now, it expands to cover the entire Indo Pacific. Previously, Sagar doctrine was largely restricted to Indian Ocean. Now, Mahasagar would apply to the entire Indo Pacific. So, our ties with Maldives and the revival of the relationship is a It's a clear sign of the success of Mahasagar doctrine and the neighborhood first policy of India. So, using these points, I think you should be able to write any answer, any question which is asked on this topic. Discuss the recent developments in India Maldives relations and analyze the implications for India's strategic interests in the Indian Ocean region. So, start by talking about the strategic location of Maldives, why Maldives is important in the Indian Ocean. That can be one introduction, one way of starting the answer. Or you can take a different approach as well. You can talk about the tensions, the recent tensions that were there, and how we have seen a turnaround. This could also be the start of your answer. It will basically set the context. So it's up to you. You decide as to how you can start the answer. But it should basically do justice to the given question. Question is asking the developments in India Maldives relationship, the recent developments. So either start with the strategic location, why it is important, why it is significant, or directly start with the recent developments, the tensions, and the turnaround in the relationship. So just set that context, and then in the body, you can give all the details that we have discussed. The Indian projects, the series of events that took place with Mohammad Muizu coming to power. Quickly explain that in bullet points, and then you can explain how this, uh, it establishes our success in the Mahar Sagar approach and under the neighborhood first policy doctrine, how it helps counter China, how it cements India's position in the Indian Ocean and in the Indo-Pacific, and then conclude your answer. You have to point out that while the turnaround is good news for India, we still have to be cautious because China, Pakistan, and others will be looking to create problems. So we should be vigilant. We should maintain sustained engagement. We should constantly engage with our neighbors. They might resort to hostile policies, but we cannot have an emotional reaction, right? We should sustain our nuanced foreign policy, have a mature approach, and ensure that we bring the neighborhood in our favor, swing our neighboring countries in our influence, right? That is something you can highlight that India should safeguard its interests through such mature diplomacy. So take up the model answer. This is again for your reference, and you can use this for your answer writing practice. Next, India's hunt for critical strategic minerals. Very important topic, relevant for economy as well, but very crucial for international relations as well. So here we'll talk about this from the IR perspective. So as you all know, there is a global race for critical strategic minerals because they have a lot of significance. Critical strategic minerals like lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, rare earth elements, they're very crucial in various industries, especially strategic industries, in electronics, for the future of artificial intelligence, for chip making, for defense, aerospace. Multiple sectors have a lot of dependency, including clean energy sectors like solar, wind, and other forms of clean renewable energy. Battery industry would be heavily dependent on lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Essentially, the future of the economy is dependent on these critical strategic minerals, their availability. Right now, their distribution is limited to some parts of the world. Very few countries are blessed with these resources, and very few countries are able to control the supply chain, especially China. China almost has a monopoly, a near 100% dominance on the entire supply chain, from mining these precious resources to processing and refining it and distributing it around the world. The entire supply chain is largely controlled by Chinese companies. Now, this is a strategic risk. China is known to misuse economic advantages for geopolitical gains. India almost has 100% dependency on China for lithium supplies. Even some of the rare earths and other key strategic minerals, we have almost 100% dependency on China controlled supply chains. And this could be a big geopolitical disadvantage. In fact, most countries are looking to diversify their supply chains, especially for critical strategic minerals. They're looking to focus on their own domestic resources that are available. They're also looking at international acquisition, where they can find new partners and new suppliers. They're also looking at recycling so that the critical strategic minerals which are going waste can be brought back into production through recycling and create a circular economy. So this has become a priority for almost every country today, and India is in this race for critical strategic minerals. It is a geopolitical race, like a arms race or a space race, where countries have competed. Similarly, you see a competition, a geopolitical competition, as all the global powers are rushing to get hold of these precious minerals and resources. Now, this is where you need to note India's policies, India's initiatives. In the recent budget, India has launched the National Critical Minerals Mission. This focuses on exploration of domestic reserves that we have. For example, in Jammu and Kashmir, we have found large scale lithium reserves in the initial exploration. In other parts of India, in Karnataka, in Jharkhand, Rajasthan, some lithium reserves and critical strategic mineral reserves have been found. So we are still exploring them. So we want to see whether there is any potential for domestic exploration and mining and to set up the entire supply chain in the country to fully extract our domestic potential. Then we will look at foreign acquisition, acquiring mines in other countries, securing reliable supplies at reliable rates and diversifying the supplies. So we are partnering with many friendly countries for this. And the mission focuses on recycling as well. These are the priorities of National Critical Minerals Mission. So India has joined the US-led Mineral Security Partnership, MSP. India has also entered into arrangements with Australia, with Argentina, with African countries like Namibia. During recent visit of PM Modi to Namibia, India has signed several agreements, and India is actively looking out for partners in this particular space. We are working with Japan as well, with European partners, to ensure that the technology needed for mining these resources, processing them, handling them is available. And India is promoting those relations with Japan, South Korea, Belgium, France, Russia as well. We are partnering with all of them to diversify the sources. And India has even set up a public sector company, public sector undertaking called Kabil, Khanij Bidesh India Limited. The Khanij Bidesh India Limited has been scouting for these minerals abroad. It has already struck a license agreement with Argentina in the Lithium Triangle. Lithium Triangle is said to have the world's largest lithium reserves in South America. It includes your ABC countries, Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So Kabil has struck a mining block with the government of Argentina, and we have gained access to lithium brine blocks in the Lithium Triangle. Kabil is looking for similar deals in Australia, where India can get hold of mines and Kabil can partner with Australian partners and jointly mine the mineral wealth and ensure reliable supplies to India. We are looking for similar deals in Africa, be it in Namibia, in Democratic Republic of Congo, in Ghana, in many countries. We are partnering with them to try and strike such lucrative deals that can secure the supplies for India. These are the steps that we have taken, but there are challenges as well. For example, we have to simplify our domestic regulations and policies, encourage greater domestic participation. India does have some limited reserves. We have to fully explore that, fully tap that potential. And to build that ecosystem, we need simplified policies and regulations. We need active support from the government. The government will have to encourage the private industry, incentivize them, and this will require policy reforms. It will require investments in R&D, because look at others, look at US, look at China. They are many steps ahead of India when it comes to tapping critical strategic minerals. They have made those investments. India is lagging behind. So if India has to catch up, we have to overcome the challenges. And this is the only way forward. Yeah. So if you can bring this argument in a question related to the geopolitical race regarding critical strategic minerals, that is more than sufficient. So take up this practice question. Discuss the geopolitical implications of India's pursuit of critical strategic minerals. How can India balance its domestic needs with global partnerships to ensure mineral security? Start by explaining the role of critical strategic minerals. I think that is a right introduction here. In one small paragraph, explain why critical strategic minerals are important. What is its relevance? Then, in the body, discuss the race, the competition, the Chinese dominance. What measures is India taking with friendly partners to overcome this dependency? Explain that and discuss the challenges and present a way forward as you conclude your answer. Yeah. So please follow this structure. This is more than sufficient. I've even given the rough word estimate that you can use for introduction, body, and conclusion so that you stick within the word limit. So I hope the discussion is helpful. And if you guys are liking the session, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel and share your comments as well, whether the session has been useful in revising current affairs along with focusing on answer writing practice. Now we have few more topics to go. Let's try to cover as many as possible for some more time. Let's look at the Southeast Asia and Indo-Pacific region, which could also be very important as it has been in the news quite regularly. India-ASEAN relations is something UPSC has not really asked a question upon in the mains exam. Though we have got a lot of prelims questions, mains questions on ASEAN has been slightly limited. But in the previous exams, we have got questions on South China Sea tensions. But doesn't mean UPSC will not repeat the topic. In fact, there have been repeated questions on Indo-Pacific and South China Sea. The format of the question might be different, the wording might be different, but eventually the topic is exactly the same. So let's take a quick look at India-ASEAN ties, particularly in the context of South China Sea disputes which are going on. Now, see, India has a dedicated foreign policy doctrine towards this region. We had the Look East policy of 1991, launched by then Prime Minister PV Narasimha Rao. After the Cold War ended, India was looking for new partners. It was looking for fresh diplomatic support, or it was looking for markets and investments because we were also dealing with the economic crisis of our own. So, Look East policy was designed to pay special attention to Southeast Asia and as well as East Asia region. This policy gave tremendous results. We stepped up our ties with the ASEAN group, which is central to the Indo-Pacific. ASEAN is a regional grouping of 10 Southeast Asian countries. So we stepped up high level engagement. Regularly, ministers, officials were interacting, and India ASEAN Summit was also established to allow the leaders of these countries to interact together. We stepped up our economic ties, defense strategic relations, and cultural ties as well. And in 2014, this policy has been upgraded by the Modi government into the Act East policy of India. The Act East policy is an improved version. It's like a better version of Look East. We are trying to address some of the shortcomings of Look East policy. In Look East policy, though the vision was there, though grand ambition was there, execution was lacking. Some of the proposed projects were not completed, investments were not taken forward. The trade agreement, the FTA between India and ASEAN, has adversely affected India. Defense security ties didn't get much priority, whereas economic ties really flourished. So, though Look East was a big success, there were some shortcomings, some areas where we could have done better. That's why Act East policy was launched with renewed focus on Southeast and East Asia region. So, India has been playing a very big role across the Indo Pacific today as we seek to counter China and establish our foothold in the Indo Pacific. But one major challenge here is the tensions in South China Sea. China has been very, very aggressive in South China Sea. It has drawn a U shaped line, the 9 dash line, based on historical claims. It has no basis in international law, and it is violating established international rules under the UN clause, UN Convention on Law of the Sea, and it is disrupting the free and open nature of Indo Pacific. It is claiming several islands like Paracel Islands, Spratly Islands, and the others. It is stepping up military aggression along with diplomatic aggression. Chinese Navy, Coast Guard, Chinese Air Force, they are very, very aggressive here. And they are even preventing sometimes the movement of vessels and aircraft, which is against international law. So China has picked disputes with multiple countries, with Vietnam, with Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, with Philippines, with Japan also in the East China Sea over Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. And China alone can't be blamed for this. The United States is to be equally blamed as well. Because ever since US realized China is a major threat over the last 20, 30 years, US has been poking China and deliberately instigating China in the region. US has increased its military deployment in the region, and it's giving more support to Taiwan, to Philippines, Japan to try and counter and encircle China. So China feels threatened, and that's why it reacts more aggressively. And this cycle of Cold War is going on between US and China. And the other countries here have become pawns in this larger game between US and China. China wants to get hold of the trade routes. This is one of the most important trade route that links Indian Ocean with the Pacific. Almost 60% of global trade, 45% of global energy imports passes through South China Sea. Also, it is blessed with resources. There are hydrocarbon reserves, fisheries, and precious minerals found on the seafloor as well, which amounts to trillions of dollars of wealth. China wants to control these waters, the trade routes, and get hold of the resources. And there is this competition which has broken out. And these tensions are turning into military tensions with possible conflicts breaking out. So, this is where a challenge comes up for India because any disruption of maritime traffic through Malacca Strait and South China Sea will directly impact India's trade. A large part of India's exports imports passes through Malacca and South China Sea. We have very friendly ties with countries in this region, with Vietnam, with Philippines and others. We have an obligation to stand up for them and protect their interests. That is why India has a stated policy. India is looking to uphold the rules based order, and we support free and open Indo Pacific. So, this is an indirect message to China that we expect everyone to respect the international law and the established rules under UN Convention on Law of the Sea. If you have any disputes, you can settle them at Permanent Court of Arbitration or even at the International Tribunal on Law of the Sea. These dispute resolution mechanisms are available under the UN clause. So India has stepped up its strategic engagement in this regard. If China can poke India in our backyard, in the Indian Ocean, in Bay of Bengal, in Arabian Sea, India can also do the same. We are stepping up our presence in South China Sea in particular. And recently, with ASEAN, we have elevated the relationship to comprehensive strategic partnership. This was done last year. So, this is also part of current development. India has become a major defense partner today for Southeast Asian countries. We are being very bold in our military engagement and strategic ties with Southeast Asia. We have close military cooperation with Singapore, with Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. We have multiple military exercises with all of them. We supply arms and weapons to Vietnam since we operate similar military equipment, which is of Soviet origin and Russian origin, like the Sukhoi 30 fighter jets and the Kilo class diesel submarines of USSR and Russia. We help Vietnam in training their armed forces and maintaining their military equipment. We supply them spare parts and components. Vietnam has allowed ISRO to set up a tracking station, and Vietnam is very eager to buy the BrahMos cruise missile from India. But there is another country which has already bought the BrahMos, that is Philippines. You might remember recently, just a couple of days back, the president of Philippines visited India. It was a very big milestone. Philippines has recently procured BrahMos from India, one of the most versatile, most accurate and fastest cruise missiles in the world. Philippines has procured the naval variant, which can be used to hit enemy ships and enemy shore targets, which obviously is designed to help Philippines counter the Chinese threats. So now India has become a major weapon supplier, and Philippines is looking for further deals on BrahMos. It's even looking to buy Akash air defense system and the Tejas light combat aircraft. So our military presence is growing. Indian Navy is constantly deployed on port visits and naval exercises as well. And our economic strategic ties are also improving. And this establishes India as a major player in South China Sea. We support the claims of these countries. We want peace and stability to be maintained. We oppose China's aggression and violation of rules based order. We even partner with global powers, with Japan, US, and Australia. We are bringing that global pressure. Because, see, right now, China's assertiveness is growing day by day. Just few months ago, China has captured the Sandy Cay Reef in the Philippine Sea, which is part of South China Sea. So China's aggression has gone up. It has even sunk some of the vessels and boats of Philippines and Indonesia. These are very aggressive moves. Any mistake or miscalculation might turn into a bigger war, a conflict. The same could happen between China and Japan as well in East China Sea. That is why India is focused on working with ASEAN group and Quad countries to keep China's aggression under check. This is our approach. Promoting our own economic, diplomatic, military engagement, stepping up our support for these countries, working with groups like ASEAN and Quad to push India's principled position on the South China Sea dispute. This is how India is trying to bring that pressure back on China. So take up this practice question. I've given the entire structure. You can go through this later. And the model answer also is ready. Just have to download the PPT after the session ends. I'll share it on my Telegram channel. Right, I've shared the screen, the QR code at the start of the class. So join the Telegram channel, and after the session, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. So please go through the structure. I've given you all the points step by step. Clear reference points are included with the entire model answer as well. So try to make use of this for your answer writing practice. Now, coming to the next topic, last few topics in IR, then we will look at some security topics, and then I think we can close the session. India US strategic convergence and tariff wars. This is another important topic. India US relations is extremely important. There are areas where we are very close partners working very closely with each other, but at the same time, Trump's erratic policies has created new problems for India. So how does India navigate this difficult period? Because right now, Trump's policies are creating the biggest challenge for India's independent foreign policy. So there might be a question based on this topic. First, let's look at the good. Let's look at the positive of India US relations under Donald Trump. And then we will look at the bad and ugly side of it. See, India US are said to be the most important partners of 21st century. Many experts, even the governments of India US, have referred to this relationship between the two largest democracies as the most defining partnership of 21st century. Especially in last 2 decades, we have seen the close defense, security, economic ties that have flourished between India and US. It all transformed with the India US civil nuclear deal when US recognized our nuclear program and gave legitimacy to our nuclear program and helped India to gain that global legitimacy and recognition to even enter export control regimes. India was brought out of that isolation, that pariah status that we had over our nuclear weapons program. And US became a key supplier of arms and weapons. Advanced military technology was offered to India, which would help India counter China. We bought advanced planes, transport planes like C-17, Globemaster, C-130J, Super Hercules. We even bought the P-8I Poseidon for maritime surveillance, for anti-submarine warfare. We bought advanced helicopters from the US, such as the Apache, the Chinook, or the MH-60 Romeo, the Seahawk helicopters. We even bought drones, the MQ-9B, Sea Guardian, Sky Guardian drones. The armed version also is being bought by India. So we have such important defense relations. We bought M777 howitzer guns. Now we are looking to buy the Javelin anti-tank guided missile, the Striker infantry vehicle, what not. India US have become very close partners, including transfer of technology, joint design, joint uh, co-production and development. So there has been a massive transformation in the ties. Today, both countries have a 2+2 ministerial dialogue between the foreign defense ministries on both sides. US has recognized India as a major defense partner. Then, under the Biden administration, India US even launched ICET, Initiative on Critical Emerging Technologies, which now has been transformed into the Trust Initiative. Earlier this year, when PM Modi visited the US, the ICET, which was launched under the Biden administration, has now been renamed and restructured as the Trust Initiative between India and US. This is one big outcome. It's not an entirely new initiative. It's a restructuring, renaming of the previous ICET initiative. It stands for transforming the relationship using strategic technology. The focus of this trust initiative is to bring India US closer. The government research institutions, private research institutions, and startups, even the academia, bring the research establishment together so they can focus on critical emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum computing, even space cooperation. These have been the priority areas. Now, take for example the Indian astronaut from the Indian Air Force, Mr. Shukla, who recently flew on a SpaceX mission, Axiom 5 mission to the International Space Station. That was possible because of this collaboration. India would eventually sign the Artemis Accords following the launch of ICET initiative that allows India to partner with NASA. ISRO can partner with NASA on its lunar mission and other space exploratory missions. And that essentially translated into the second Indian astronaut being sent into space and the first astronaut to be sent to the International Space Station. So now the Trust Initiative will not only promote collaboration in these critical technologies and emerging technologies, but it also has a new pillar. It will also focus on building resilient supply chains and gaining access to critical minerals. This was not there under ICET. Though ICT covered everything, including supply chains, it didn't have special focus on securing critical mineral supplies. So, with the Trust Initiative announced by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, there is a focus on securing supplies of critical minerals, securing resilient supply chains, along with focusing on joint research and collaboration in these critical emerging technological domains. Then, through the Quad, we have really transformed our collaboration with US, Australia, and Japan in the Indo Pacific. The Quad today has been diversified. It's focusing on economic initiatives, on scientific collaboration as well. The Quad is not restricted to countering China. Of course, primary goal of Quad is to enforce international rules on China, maintain free and open Indo Pacific. But today, Quad has been diversified because of India's insistence. Because we didn't want Quad to seem like a military alliance, which is designed to contain China. So India insisted Quad should be diversified, and today it's focusing on economic ties, on scientific collaboration, and other areas as well. And the transformation of Quad is another success of India-US collaboration. India has joined Mineral Security Partnership, as we discussed earlier. We have signed new defense deals. India is procuring the GE F414 jet engines for the LCA Tejas fighter jet program, which is very crucial for the Indian Air Force. And we are no longer just a buyer seller relationship. There is transfer of technology which is being included. Is that clear? Then coming to armed drones and drones for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The MQ-9B, which is the latest variant of the Predator Reaper drones, will enhance India's surveillance intelligence gathering capabilities, and the armed version could even be used for precision strikes. And all of you are aware how warfare today has transformed because of the extensive usage of drones. Not just the military grade drones, even toy drones, commercially available drones, have transformed the battlefield, right? We have seen that in Ukraine, in Gaza, in West Asia, between Israel and Iran, and also between India and Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. So, such close ties have developed between India US. But one major concern, one issue, is the erratic policy making of Donald Trump, the protectionist policy. India already had an issue with Trump's immigration policy where Indian migrants were being targeted. Illegal migrants from India were humiliated, mistreated, and deported as well. Right? India already had an issue with the way in which Indian illegal migrants were being treated. And in general, the concerns of the Indian community, which has contributed so much to the US. We are one of the largest diasporas in the US, more than 3 million Indian students, workers contributing to the American economy. And today they are being, in a way, cornered. And in general, minority groups are facing significant threats because of the rise of far right wing, white supremacist, extremist ideology under Donald Trump. So India already has deep concerns about this. And now the trade wars of Donald Trump. Trump started out by imposing a 50% tariff on India's steel and aluminum sector. In fact, this was a repetition of what Trump had done in his first presidency. Between 2016 to 2020, Trump had resorted to a similar trade war where he had placed high tariffs on India's steel aluminum imports. He even took away the GSP status to India, the generalized system of preferences, the status which had been given to India for giving preferential treatment for some Indian exports to US, which would help our small industries and micro industries. This critical status was taken away, which affected Indian exports. Now, Trump has brought back such hostile trade policies again, just like he has targeted America's allies like Canada, Mexico, European partners, NATO allies, and even threatened China. On a similar footing, US has been right now targeting India as well. During the so-called Liberation Day tariffs on April 2nd, Trump announced that India would be hit with 26% tariff as India has a huge trade surplus. See, this is true. When you look at the trade relationship, US is one of the top two trading partners for India. Our trade volume is somewhere around $130 billion. Out of that, our exports occupy the major share. So there is a huge trade deficit, almost 40 to $45 billion in favor of India. This is where Trump has a problem. He has a problem with trade deficits. He assumes that trade deficits are inherently bad because his understanding of economics is very poor. It's even worse than uh, a fresher in economics, right? So Trump assumes trade deficits are inherently bad, and his whole campaign, electoral campaign, has been making America great again, MAGA, and he believes in bringing back American manufacturing and creating jobs, and he sees, placing such tariffs as the way out. He believes this will force American companies to invest in the US itself. But nevertheless, I'm not going into the economic assessment of this, but let's look at the implications for our diplomatic ties. Now, India US were actually trying to negotiate a trade deal because these Liberation Day tariffs had been paused. Trump had paused all the tariffs. A minimum baseline 10% tariff was being applied. So India was quickly trying to strike a deal. You might have heard recently US and European Union struck a deal. US and Japan, US Vietnam, US Philippines, US Indonesia, they all struck trade deals and reasonable tariffs were levied on them. But now India and US, they couldn't come to the same agreement because India wanted to protect sensitive sectors like agriculture, dairy, animal husbandry, MSME sectors. We can't simply open up these sensitive sectors. We are a developing nation, right? Our producers won't be able to compete with advanced economies and their massive conglomerates and corporations. So when India insisted on some protections, US rejected these concerns and it has essentially walked out. The trade deal as of now has fallen apart. Maybe in the coming months we might work out a trade deal, but now Trump has shocked India by first declaring 25% tariffs on all Indian exports. This was just a few days ago. And he also mentioned there will be a penalty on India. Why? Penalty for India's trade with Russia. Basically, Trump has taken aim at the strategic India Russia relations. US has always been accusing that India is buying Russian oil, bypassing Western sanctions. But this is India's stated policy. We have an independent foreign policy. We don't follow unilateral sanctions. We are not American allies to blindly follow what their sanctions say. Russia is a time tested friend and partner, so India continued that close relationship. We have been one of the largest buyers of Russian oil, in a way, fueling the war in Ukraine, and in the process, profiting from this, as India is now re exporting petrochemical products into European market. But US and European countries together have tried targeting Indian companies with sanctions, and now Trump has levied a penalty. And yesterday, he has announced additional 25% tariffs as a penalty. So, what's the total tariff? 50%, which currently is the highest tariff in the world that US is imposing against any trade partner. Every other country, every other trade partner has got a better deal, even Pakistan. In fact, Trump has opened up a new romance with Pakistan, striking a so-called oil deal, inviting Asim Munir for lunch, supporting Pakistan directly and indirectly, despite the country being a state sponsor of terrorism, and not giving explicit support to India in our war against terrorism. Trump's policies are completely off track. And this raises a very, very serious question about the very health of India US relationship. See, I'm not saying India US relations are going to collapse, but such hostile moves by a friendly partner will create difficulties and challenges for India. So, India's options are limited. Of course, we will see closer ties with Russia. You might have seen in the news, NSA Ajit Doval has visited Moscow yesterday. The timing of the visit is very crucial. And Putin has apparently confirmed that he will be visiting India this month. That clearly shows India is reiterating its policy of strategic autonomy, that we will not bend, we will not be threatened and blackmailed by US and Trump's policies. At the same time, we will not seek to antagonize the US. That is for sure, because India has a dependency on the US. Though US needs India, India also needs US for key supplies, especially weapons and key technologies, and the well-being of the Indian community. Our economic ties are too important for us. So we do have a disadvantageous position. We have that dependency on US more than American dependency on India. But India will not do anything to harm or destroy this relationship. But definitely we will retaliate. There will be some reciprocal tariffs and some countermeasures by India, a tit for tat move, because that's how diplomacy works. But one thing is clear, that right now our ties are at its lowest in the last 25 years. The last time India US relations was at this point was probably in 1998 during the Pokhran nuclear tests. So, in this context, UPSC will likely focus on India US relations, the defense, strategic, and economic ties, and the trade tensions. All these topics are very important. So, take up this practice question, critically examine the evolving strategic partnership between India and US in the context of recent technological collaborations and trade tensions. How do initiatives like trust and defense agreements contribute to India's strategic autonomy? So this is the question for you. Okay. The structure is already provided. You can first start with an outline of India US strategic ties. Point out that US is one of our top trading partners. US is a key defense supplier. And India US relationship is seen as the most defining partnership of the century. Use those hyperbolic points in the introduction, but also mention that new challenges are coming up because of Trump's policies. In the body, give the details. Give the details of the special defense and technological collaboration between India US, and then talk about the trade tensions and the concerns it has created. But please conclude by saying that India will not compromise on its strategic autonomy. We can't compromise on our independent foreign policy. So try to reiterate this point and conclude the answer by saying that India should focus on its multi aligned approach. That is what works for Indian interests. We should try and address this tension in the relationship with US, try to repair the damage while maintaining our independent ties with Russia. We can't compromise our ties with Russia just because of Trump and his policies, just because of United States, because US is being hypocritical. What has Trump done with regard to Israel? Hasn't Trump overlooked gross human right violations being committed by Israel, where 60,000 plus Palestinians have been killed, with a large number of them being innocent children? Here, US is openly backing the war, arming Israel, supporting Israel, but they are selectively targeting Russia because that suits their geopolitical interests. So why should India fall prey to American geopolitical objectives and foreign policy interests? We have our independent relations. We have to reiterate this point while trying to repair the ties with US. So try to end your answer with this balanced approach, focusing on multi-aligned policy of India. So this would be the model answer. So please use this for your reference later. Now, in this particular topic, I've taken PM Modi's visit to 6 important countries. PM Modi recently visited 6 important countries, two of them in Europe, Cyprus and Croatia. Then PM Modi visited 2 countries in Africa, Ghana and Namibia. And PM Modi visited 2 countries in Latin America, Trinidad and Tobago and Argentina. 2 countries in Europe, 2 countries in Africa, 2 countries in Latin America. Now, this in itself is a very big development because it symbolizes a big shift in India's foreign policy, a new focus that, that you get to see under India's foreign policy outreach. So, all the details are given here. I will explain the analysis, but the facts you can find it in the PPT itself. I just don't want to waste the time focusing only on the facts because in mains, what really matters is the assessment, the analysis that you provide. So I'll take you through these visits to Europe, Africa, and Latin America. Let's look at them one by one. But the focus would be on the assessment of India's outreach to these countries in Europe, Africa, and Latin America. Now, if you look at Cyprus, it's a small island nation located here in the Mediterranean. So, why did PM Modi visit this country? That's what we have to understand. Then, Croatia, I'll show you the map where it is located. It'll help you understand something that India is trying to do in Europe, something new. So, Cyprus is very crucial for us for several reasons. Cyprus is a member of European Union. Next year, it's going to hold the presidency of the Council of European Union, which is the one of the legislative organs of the EU. Since India is looking for good ties with EU, we are seeking a trade agreement, the bilateral trade and investment agreement. Cyprus can bring its positive influence in favor of India. But apart from that, Cyprus represents a great economic opportunity for Indian investments, especially in the energy sector. Okay. Cyprus represents a strategic opportunity as well to counter Turkey or Turkey, which has been unnecessarily hostile towards India by siding with Pakistan and by meddling with India's internal matters like Jammu and Kashmir. Even during Operation Sindoor, I'm sure you know, Turkey was supplying arms and weapons to Pakistan. It has backed Pakistan on Kashmir issue at United Nations and at the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So this is highly problematic for India. So by working with Cyprus, we can counter Turkey because these 2 countries have a standing conflict. There's a historical conflict with regard to Cyprus between the Greek Cypriots in the south and the Turkish Cypriots in the north. In fact, the nearby country of Greece was meddling in Cyprus at one point to support the Greek Cypriots. It supported a coup attempt in 1970s to topple the government and ensure Greek Cypriots and their rights were protected. There were a lot of communal clashes going on between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. So, following this Greek attempt to cause a coup to topple this government, Turkey invaded the country to protect the Turkish Cypriots. Since then, it occupies this part of the country, northern part, not northeastern part of Cyprus. So, there is a standing dispute between them, territorial and maritime dispute, which continues till this date. So, this is where India can take a position If Turkey can stand against India on the Kashmir issue and support Pakistan, then so can India support Cyprus over the disputed conflict over here and take a clear stand against Turkey. This gives us that strategic leverage. Then, along with that, there is a great economic opportunity. Cyprus is strategically located closer to Eastern and Central Europe, which is becoming a new focal point for India. See, traditionally, India's policy towards Europe has focused on Western Europe and Northern Europe. Countries like Britain, France, Germany, even Norway and Scandinavian countries, they have been the focus and priority. But in general, we have neglected Central and Eastern Europe. But in the last 2 years, India is paying more focus and attention. Last year, PM Modi visited Ukraine. PM Modi also visited Poland. PM Modi also visited Austria. Now, this is a clear outreach from India. These are not random visits to some small countries. These are well planned visits focused on Central Eastern Europe because this represents a great market opportunity for India. With connectivity projects like the IMEC corridor, which was proposed at the G20 summit, India can work with IMEC countries to extend the route, link the IMEC corridor from Israel with Greece and countries like Cyprus, Croatia, and to take this network into Central Eastern Europe, which will allow India to access these markets to increase our exports. We can drive Indian investments and get essential commodities, raw materials from Central Eastern Europe. And this will help us counter Chinese presence and influence in Eastern Central Europe. So this is the larger game plan of India. Connectivity projects can be extended, Turkey can be countered, and economic ties can be promoted. What more do you want? And upon this, Cyprus has hydrocarbon reserves in the Mediterranean Sea. There's a standing maritime dispute here between Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, where the exclusive economic zone is disputed. But Cyprus has a large and vast EEZ. And by the way, we have fantastic relations with Greece. Greece is part of IMEC project as well. The strategic Piraeus port of Greece will be connected to the IMEC corridor. So the same route can be extended into Cyprus and into Central Eastern Europe, giving us great access to Central Eastern European market. And we can potentially tap the hydrocarbon reserves, and Cyprus can become an energy supplier. Greece can become an energy supplier. We have even stepped up our naval military deployment in the Mediterranean by working with Greece and other like minded countries, including Italy. That is why this visit is so important. So, there is a practice question for you, which you will go through later. Because for each visit, I've added a question, and I don't want to discuss each one of them. You can go through the structure and the model answer, which I've added here. Now, coming to the next country PM Modi visited, Croatia. These visits were during the G7 summit when PM Modi was traveling to Canada for the G7. He covered both these European countries. While going, he visited Cyprus. While coming back, he visited Croatia. Now, by the way, PM Modi has become the first Indian PM to visit Croatia. That itself is very significant. Now, why is Croatia important? Look at the map. Croatia is another vital country in the southeastern part of Europe. It's part of the Balkan region and it faces the Adriatic Sea that links with the Mediterranean. There are strategic ports in Croatia which can be crucial to access Central and Eastern Europe. Now, don't you think the same IMEC corridor, which comes here from Israel, can be extended into Croatia and the Balkan region? And from here, India can access Central and Eastern European markets. That is the reason why Croatia has acquired a lot of significance. So, India is working closely with Croatia. There are opportunities for economic ties There's a historical relationship going back to the days of Yugoslavia during the Cold War period. And also, Croatia is both a member of NATO and European Union. It's a member of NATO military alliance and European Union as well, which is very significant for India. Now, look at this map here. Croatia has some strategic ports like Rijeka, Split, Pols, Dubrovnik. These are very crucial ports opening to the Adriatic Sea. And there is a mega transport network which is being built across Europe called the TENT transport network. The members of European Union and other European countries are executing this mega transport connectivity project called TENT, Trans-European Transport Network. It includes a series of road, rail projects that will link with strategic European ports. You can see here how multiple European countries are being interconnected from west to east, from north to south. All the trade routes in Europe are being linked through the TENT network. Now, India's long term goal is to link the IMEC corridor with the TENT network so that the entire European market will become accessible to India. Some of the European countries, they have another initiative called the Three Seas Initiative. The Three Seas Initiative is designed to link the Baltic Sea in the north with the Adriatic in the south and the Black Sea in the east. Around 12 European countries that are present in this triangle, they are working on the Three Seas Initiative, trying to build road rail network to link up their strategic ports and create a massive trade corridor. So this will significantly transform Central Eastern Europe, where China is already a big player because of its Belt and Road Initiative. This essentially is India's goal to counter China, to gain access to the markets in Central Eastern Europe, step up our own presence and influence, find new partners and new markets. So you need to acknowledge, recognize this new approach of India's foreign policy. You have to look at the larger picture. You have to mention PM Modi's last year visits to Ukraine, Poland, Austria. It is a continuation of this as to why PM Modi has visited Cyprus and Croatia. This shows India's renewed focus on Central Eastern Europe to counter China, to gain new markets and improve connectivity through IMEC project. That explains this important topic. Now, go through the practice question. This is specific to PM Modi's visit to Croatia. Now, there can be a combined question. UPSC might give you a question on India's new approach towards Europe region or India's new focus in Europe. So be prepared for this as well. Now, let's move to the visits in Africa. This time, PM Modi was traveling to Brazil for attending the BRICS summit. And while going and coming back, PM Modi covered several countries, covered almost 5 countries in one single visit in just hardly 8 or 9 days. The first stop was in the African country of Ghana, which has been a historical traditional partner. See, this again symbolizes our renewed approach in Africa. It shows our new steps, new initiatives in our African diplomacy. Traditionally in Africa, we have paid more attention to East Africa and Southern Africa. Since geographically we are closer, and even through history, through culture, through trade, we are more connected with Eastern and Southern Africa. This is where we have a large Indian diaspora community as well. But our focus on Western Africa has been a little limited. Now, under the African diplomacy that India is pursuing, gain access to Africa's precious resources, to help African countries in their development, and to step up our strategic influence to counter China. India has been very proactive in Africa since the days of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. For the last 20 years at least, we have really rejuvenated our African diplomacy. We have opened new embassies in West Africa, increased our investments. A lot of Indian companies operate in West Africa as well. We are trying to pay attention to North and Central Africa as well. Now, last year, PM Modi visited Nigeria in 2024. Nigeria has deep links with India. Since 1960s, thousands of Indian doctors and teachers have settled here, contributing to Nigeria. And Nigeria is one of the top economies today in Africa. There are hundreds of Indian companies investing and operating here. We have stepped up our defense military relations as well because countries like Nigeria, they deal with security threats. There are terrorist groups like Boko Haram, which pose a threat, and it becomes a combined common threat for India and Nigeria. This was during last year's visit of PM Modi. So, to counter terrorism and even to counter organized crime and piracy, the Gulf of Guinea. This is the Gulf of Guinea. So, to stabilize this critical water body, counter the security threats, India has entered into security arrangement as well with Nigeria, apart from stepping up our economic and diplomatic influence. Now, after visiting Nigeria last year, now PM Modi has visited Ghana, another important country in Western Africa. Ghana is one of the leading exporters of gold, cocoa, and other key minerals, and it opens towards the Gulf of Guinea and the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, our ties with Ghana goes back to the non-aligned movement. India, Ghana worked with the then leaders of Indonesia, Egypt, and Yugoslavia. These were the five countries. These were the five legendary leaders of these five nations who founded the non-aligned movement during Cold War period. Prime Minister Nehru was a great friend of Ghana's then president, Kwame Nkrumah. So we have a historical foundation. We have been part of the global south. We have been working together, supporting decolonization of Africa, supporting the rise of Africa, the development of Africa. So now the visit of PM Modi has led to the elevation of this partnership. India is rolling out the UPI payment system in Ghana. Ghana becomes one of the first African countries to adopt India's digital payment gateway. We are promoting our cultural ties, our soft power relations. You can see all the initiatives that have been mentioned over here. We have donated medical devices and equipment. We are looking to further our trade, and there are key minerals that Ghana can supply to India. Gold and other key minerals is something that India would like to access. In fact, India has even built a railway project in Ghana. We've entirely funded the construction of a key railway link. So this visit highlights India's new focus on Africa, particularly the untouched areas like West Africa and other parts of Africa. Because traditionally we have given more attention to Eastern and Southern Africa. Now, coming to PM Modi's visit to another African nation, Namibia, which is located in Southwest Africa. Namibia is another country located towards the southwest part of Africa, shares borders with South Africa here, Angola, faces the Atlantic Ocean, it's close to the strategic Gulf of Guinea, it's also close to the Cape of Good Hope. It's a crucial trade route, by the way. More importantly, Namibia shares historical ties with India because India has been one of the active supporters of Namibia's independence from colonial rule, from the apartheid regime from South Africa. India was the one which backed and supported the Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO, which was fighting for the independence of the southwest part of Africa, which today has become the country of Namibia. The first embassy of SWAPO was opened in Delhi. India was the one which allowed this liberation movement to set up their first ever embassy, giving recognition to this country even before it was made independent. We directly supported their independence from colonial rule and even against apartheid from South Africa. We not only gave diplomatic support at United Nations, He gave direct support for the liberation movement, supplying funds, military training, and covert intelligence support to back the liberation movement in the southwestern part of Africa, which today is the independent nation of Namibia. Now, Namibia is very critical for us because it has one of the largest uranium reserves and is the third largest producer of uranium after Kazakhstan and Australia. In fact, India and Namibia have signed a civil nuclear agreement under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Both countries have already signed a civil nuclear deal, and Namibia can be a reliable supplier of uranium for our nuclear program. Namibia also has many other precious resources. There has been a recent discovery of oil and hydrocarbon reserves. It has diamond deposits and critical strategic mineral deposits, which is what India is looking for. So, this visit of PM Modi will help cement India's influence in the southwest part of Africa as well. This helps us counter China, which has made big inroads through its Belt and Road Initiative. See, China has a forum called FOCAC, Forum on China Africa Cooperation, which was started in the year 2000. This forum meets every 3 years. China organizes it and meets with all the African countries of African Union. Through the FOCAC forum, China has really stepped up its engagement with African countries and it has pushed its Belt and Road Initiative. Today, China is involved in every nook and corner of Africa, from north to south, east to west to central Africa. It is building roads, railway lines, it is building critical infrastructure, power plants, industrial clusters. It is even selling weapons. It is even acquiring land. So China is many steps ahead of India. It's more consistent in its engagement with Africa as well. But problem is China's relations are largely one-sided and purely transactional. China is looking to benefit its own interests. China is not genuinely helping African countries to develop. China is even accused of pushing countries into a debt trap, a debt burden. Now, this is where India can stand out. Maybe India can't compete with China's investments and military might, but we have something which China does not. We have natural soft power, lot of goodwill and trust. And India genuinely pushes for mutually beneficial projects. We have always approached Africa with a humanitarian angle, not just a strategic angle. US, China, and others, they've come to loot Africa. They've never bothered about development of Africa. But India has been different. We've always approached Africa with a humanitarian angle, helped in their healthcare, their education, their socio-economic development. Any investments we have made, they have always been mutually beneficial. That is what India has sought with Africa. Now, this is the advantage India will have. It gives us an opportunity to further step up the trade. Of course, China's trade with Africa is double, more than double than what India trades with Africa. But there is an opportunity for us as well because India is really stepping up its diplomacy in Africa. These visits to countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Namibia is a clear symbol of that. Now, coming to the visits in Latin America. Why did PM Modi visit this small country, Trinidad Tobago, the Caribbean? Why did PM Modi also visit Argentina in South America? That's something we will understand. See, Trinidad Tobago is an important Caribbean nation located here to the north of Venezuela. It's a small island to the north of South America in the Caribbean Sea. So it's part of the West Indies region, the Caribbean island nations that are present. Now, across the Caribbean and across South America, in countries like Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, then even in Guyana and Suriname, you find a very large Indian community. There are lakhs of people of Indian origin because these are the descendants of Indian laborers, the indentured laborers who were transported to these faraway British colonies during British rule. Under the indentured labor system, when British Parliament banned slavery, the usage of African slaves was banned in 1833. So British enterprises like East India Company, they replaced African slavery with Indian indentured labor system. starting from 1834. They transported thousands and thousands of Indian families, especially from the Bhojpuri belt of Bihar and UP, also from Bengal, Madras, and Bombay, and other princely states as well. They were transported to almost all the British colonies, from South Pacific to the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia to Africa to the Caribbean and South America as well. That's why around the world you have a very strong and large Indian community today. So PM Modi was visiting this country to cement that partnership. PM Modi was welcomed with a performance of the traditional Bhojpuri Chautal performance. India has announced the rollout of UPI in Trinidad Tobago, which makes this the first Caribbean nation, the first country in the Americas region to have adopted India's UPI. India is setting up a Girmitia database to help the Girmitia community. The Girmitias are the indentured laborers and their descendants. This database, which India is creating, will help the descendant families to trace their origin, to trace where their ancestors came from which part of India, to help them rebuild those cultural roots and linkages. We have also offered UCI, OCI, Overseas Citizen of India status, to sixth generation Indians in Trinidad and Tobago. We are stepping up our cultural, economic ties, cementing our presence and influence in the Caribbean. See, this engagement with small countries, with developing, underdeveloped countries, will establish India as the leader of Global South. They are supporting all initiatives of India, like International Solar Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Global Biofuel Alliance. They support reforms of UN, and they support India's push for a permanent seat at UN Security Council. That is why these visits matter. Now, coming to the visit in Argentina. The reason why PM Modi visited Argentina is primarily to secure access to critical strategic minerals. Lithium is the focus for India, as Argentina has one of the world's largest deposits. It is part of the lithium triangle: Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So, India is stepping up that engagement with this key country. Though Argentina has rejected from joining BRICS, we do have good relations which we can explore in South America. This can step up our influence in the LATAM region as we try to find new resources and more support and new markets as we compete with China, even here in Latin America. China already has a big presence in Latin America through Belt and Road Initiative, be it in Caribbean islands, be it in Central America or in South America. China is already a significant player. It's in direct competition with the US, which is the traditional influence in the Americas region. So India also has a foothold because of the strong community, the diaspora community that we have. In fact, last year in 2024, PM Modi visited Guyana, signed new agreements, started new initiatives, met the strong Indian community. And PM Modi attended the CARICOM summit, the India CARICOM summit. CARICOM is a grouping of the Caribbean nations, the Caribbean community. So this again symbolizes our new approach towards Latin America. Last year's visit to Guyana, attending India CARICOM summit in 2024, now the visit to Trinidad Tobago and visit to Argentina. We are finding new resources, exploring new markets. Argentina is also considering the introduction of UPI. There is a proposal. We can even sell our weapons. Argentina has interest in buying Indian drones, Indian missiles like Akash and BrahMos, or maybe our fighter jets. So there is a potential for defense trade, potential for space cooperation, agriculture, health, and drugs and pharmaceuticals. Same with Africa. Africa is a huge market for Indian pharma sector. India is seeking a better deal with a trade group called Mercosur. Mercosur represents a trading community, a free trade area in this region. And India has a preferential trade agreement with Mercosur countries. So Argentina being a major member, it can influence this organization to get some concessions for India for expanding the preferential trade agreement. So we can increase our exports, especially pharma exports and agricultural exports to Argentina. And in return, get access to lithium mines, which can fulfill our strategic needs as well. In fact, as I mentioned in the previous topic, India's Kabil has already secured mining blocks in the Catamarca province of Argentina that you see in the map. So I think now you are able to better understand India's approach towards LATAM region. So this is what you have to remember. There is a clear sign that we are paying more attention to Central Eastern Europe, more attention to Western and Southwestern part of Africa, and more attention to Latin America. These visits will help you answer such questions. So please prepare for this topic. So on this note, I have completed almost 16 important IR topics with these practice questions and model answers. Now let's look at some topics from internal security as well. A quick look at the current affairs developments from internal security. Let me start with the very first chapter, left-wing extremism and linkages between development and extremism. So Naxalism has been a core topic. UPSC has asked multiple questions in the past, and now there has been a huge development. India is on the brink of eliminating Naxalism. Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah have set a goal, Naxal Mukt Bharat by March 2026. There have been some big developments with regard to our anti-Naxal operations. Naxals have suffered a big setback, and we are seeing the death of Naxalism right in front of us. This could be a very important topic. So let's understand the trend, the declining trend of Naxalism. And then I think we can discuss about the possibility of eliminating Naxalism. Will India achieve this target? Or will we see a revival of Naxalism in the future? Let's explore this and then we will move on to the remaining topics. See, after the government of India set the goal of Naxal Mukt Bharat, a Naxal free India by March 2026, the center has been very proactively supporting state governments, especially Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and even Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, then Telangana, even Andhra Pradesh. Because these were the last remaining stronghold areas in the Dandakaranya region, in the forested tribal belt around Bastar, Dantewad, right, Malkangiri. This is the last remaining hotspot of Naxalism. Over the years, India has done pretty well, especially in last 15, 20 years. We have not only tackled this as a security problem, we have provided better development, better governance, improved the economy here, improved the livelihood opportunities. So with this twin approach, India has done much better to eradicate Naxalism from the root ideology itself. But still, the Naxal presence in some pockets has been a concern. Our counterinsurgency efforts have really stepped up. In the last 20 years, we have seen a big decline. There was a point, I still remember, when more than 180 districts, which was nearly 30% of India's territorial extent, was affected by Naxalism. But today, this number is down to hardly around 18. According to Home Ministry data, Naxalism affected districts is reduced to just 18, and the most affected districts has come down to 6. Around 20-25 years ago, there were at least 40 to 50 most affected districts, which was the stronghold of Naxals, and now it is down to hardly 6 districts. The top leadership has suffered a big setback, and the Naxal violence has seen a big drop and decline. Look at how the attacks have plummeted. Look at the casualty numbers. In fact, this year alone, 300 plus Naxals have been neutralized by our forces. Even last year, almost 300, 400 Naxals were neutralized, and hundreds of them have surrendered. This is what indicates that Naxalism is possibly on its last leg. it might be on the brink of collapse. And recently, there was a huge milestone that was achieved, a big success. The very top leader of CPI Maoist, the General Secretary himself, Basavaraju, the most wanted Naxal, was found and eliminated and neutralized in a counterinsurgency operation. Now, this tremendous success of India is what gives hope that maybe Naxalism could be eradicated. The central government has been pitching with central forces like CRPF and its elite special force, the Cobra Battalion, which specializes in jungle and guerrilla warfare. State police forces have also contributed through their own anti Naxal forces and special task force, and especially the DRG, the District Reserve Guards in Chhattisgarh. They have played a phenomenal role in wiping out the grassroots support, because those who are recruited into DRG, they are all the local youth, and sometimes even former Naxals are recruited. Those Naxals who have surrendered, come back into mainstream, they have been recruited into district reserve guards and state level anti Naxal special forces, and they have registered a tremendous success because they have better motivation to defeat Naxalism. They would have suffered personal losses because of this extremist movement. Then they would have better understanding of local geography, local terrain. They speak local tribal languages. They understand local tribal customs. So they can build their own informant network, local intelligence network. And former Naxals, they know how Naxals operate. They can share their strategies, their tactics, their planning, which has played a very, very big role in intelligence led counterinsurgency operations. The Intelligence Bureau and technical intelligence agencies like NTRO, National Technical Research Organization, they have been generating actionable real time intelligence through human assets, through technical sources, including satellites and drones, by intercepting communication, by tracking mobile phones. They have generated very actionable real time intelligence accompanied with local informant networks, which has helped in targeted operations to eliminate the top leadership. The Politburo members have been targeted, which represents the highest decision making body in a communist party. The mid level commanders have been eliminated. So the government of India calls this the 3C approach. It has been using the 3C approach, stepping up the security presence. It has invested significantly in modernization of security forces by fortifying police stations, deploying drones and helicopters from Indian Air Force for troop deployment and evacuation. Number of security camps have gone up. Number of fortified police stations has gone up. There is better coordination between center and states. And as a result, the last remaining headquarters at the Kare Gutalu Hill base in Chhattisgarh Telangana border has been eliminated. This was considered as the last remaining headquarter or base of Naxals. The KGH base on the borders of Chhattisgarh Telangana has been completely decimated. And you will see that across this hotbed, we are seeing a very big decline in Naxal activity. Be it in Gachiroli of Maharashtra in the Amravati Vidarbha belt, be it in parts of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where Naxalism was at one point raging, in Odisha, in Malkangiri, and Chhattisgarh in Bijapur, Bastar, Dantewad sector. Across this entire region, we are seeing a big drop in Naxal activity. The top leadership is gone, and hundreds and hundreds of Naxals are now surrendering, laying down their arms. So it's only a matter of time that India might very well achieve the goal, the target. So this is the right time to step up the 3C approach of the Modi government: road connectivity, mobile connectivity, and financial connectivity. So administration can improve, governance can improve, there can be better development. The government has dedicated schemes to provide for better welfare, better progress. There is a surrender rehabilitation package that state governments are running, that they're offering to Naxals to incentivize them to surrender and lay down their arms and weapons. The central government is giving special support assistance to state governments to modernize their police forces. and infrastructure connectivity is improving with better roads, better mobile and internet connectivity, with better government schemes and delivery of government services. So, this framework of improving road connectivity, mobile and financial connectivity, this has this approach has yielded better results, and it has been responsible for the declining trend of Naxalism. But however, there is one concern. There is a human rights concern that comes up when such intense security operations are carried out. There's always a possibility of human right violations taking place. There's a possibility of civilians being injured or killed in the crossfire as collateral damage. There's a possibility of security forces taking matters into their own hands, misusing and abusing the power, especially at the state level police, where there is a possibility of fake encounters, killings, custodial torture. And this has raised concern amongst the activists, among civil society, whether this last phase of the war will result in large scale human right violations. Because in the past, Naxal corridor of India has seen some major incidents of human right violations. That is why it's important to address this question. Can India truly become free from Naxalism, as claimed by the government by March 2026? The answer looks to be a big yes. The trend indicates yes, it is likely, it is possible. May not be 100% eradication, but Naxalism might essentially become dormant by next year. But you can't assume that Naxalism is dead and gone. Naxalism is rooted in a very strong ideology, the Maoist ideology. Maoism believes in a protracted struggle. Maoists believe in regrouping and reviving and staging a resurgence. So you can't take them for granted. Yes, maybe the top leadership is being eliminated. Most of them are surrendering. There's better governance, better development. We're addressing the root causes of the problem. So definitely we might see a decline. We might see a dormancy in Naxal movement, a complete reduction in Naxal activity. But it may not be completely eradicated. 100% eradication may not happen, which means we have to maintain our vigilance. We have to maintain our intelligence networks, keep up our security presence for a few more years while we develop the region rapidly. Secure the rights for the tribal communities, for farmers, undo all the injustices that have happened because of corruption and malgovernance in this region, address the developmental problems, pull the local people away from the influence of Maoist ideology. If India can do this, then definitely we can see the defeat of Naxalism and maybe someday a complete eradication as well. But if we don't do that, if we become complacent, if we become overconfident, and if you ignore the development of the region, if you don't focus on welfare, and if you don't secure justice to the people who have been affected here, then you might even see a revival, a resurgence in the coming months and years. So that is something you need to understand. So take up this mains question. Let's discuss this particular question and the answer writing approach as well. Evaluate India's multi-dimensional strategy in achieving a Naxal Mukt Bharat. Assess the success and challenges, especially with regard to human rights and sustainable conflict resolution. So start your answer by talking about the goal which has been set by the Prime Minister and Home Minister. So that will make for a good introduction because it's in current affairs, it's in news. Then point out how left wing extremism, that is Naxalism in particular, has been India's biggest internal security threat. So, this again sets the tone for your answer. Then, in the body, discuss the recent developments, the success in security operations. This sustained operation is codenamed as Operation Black Forest. Mention such facts, give some details how the current operations are intelligence based operations aimed at the top leadership, aimed at cutting off finances. Then talk about the developmental approach, improvement in the infrastructure, the 3C framework, focus on surrender and rehabilitation. Then discuss the community engagement, the human rights angle, and whether this success is sustainable. Can we maintain the results, ensure we eventually defeat and eradicate Naxalism or not? Will we see a revival, a possible resurgence? So bring that discussion at the end and conclude your answer. In the past as well, we have weakened Naxalism, but Naxalism came back. In 1990s and early 2000, Naxalism had been weakened substantially in the Bihar West Bengal belt and also in the Andhra Pradesh Odisha belt. Naxalism had been significantly weakened. But in 2004, the various Maoist outfits like People's War Group, PWG, was operating in Andhra Odisha belt, and MCCI, Maoist Communist Center of India, operating in the Bihar West Bengal belt. They both merged to establish the CPI Maoist, which is the current Naxal outfit. So we have seen Naxals previously regroup and stage a resurgence, so we can't be complacent. So mention such interesting facts and try to justify your argument. So look at the model answer. Please go through this later. You can use this for your reference, for your answer writing. Now coming to another topic, the role of air defense in the era of drone warfare. How drones are transforming the battlefield. In internal security, UPSC will heavily focus on current developments and latest changes that are happening in the security domain. So today, drones have transformed the battlefield, and we have seen that happening right in front of us. The traditional concept of a war is essentially being replaced with these hybrid, unconventional methods. So, be it in Ukraine, be it in Gaza, be it in Lebanon, where Israel has heavily deployed drones for surveillance and armed precision attacks, or be it the conflict between Israel Iran, which we have seen multiple times over the last couple of years, the Russia Ukraine war, and as well as the India Pakistan conflict during Operation Sindoor. Then, even the latest conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, even in the Thai Cambodia conflict as well, there was extensive usage of drones. So, drones are relatively easier to operate. The cost is lower, the human involvement is minimal. When you're deploying actual helicopters, planes, fighter jets, you're risking the lives of pilots, you're risking the lives of your soldiers. But in unmanned aerial vehicles, which are remotely piloted, the best part is there is no human risk. The cost as well is much lower compared to a fighter jet or a transport plane or a helicopter. And even toy drones, commercial drones can be deployed in the battlefield if you're creative and ingenious. You can create a drone swarm, and they can even be automated using AI algorithms. You can pre-feed a location and the target, and swarm drones can be deployed against a target for surveillance, for targeting, precision attacks, and whatnot. So the rise of cheaper UAVs, drones, loitering munition, and the kamikaze drones and FPV drones is something that is changing the very nature of battlefield. In FPV drones, which is the first point of view drones, you might have seen the operator wearing a goggle, right, where they will see exactly through the camera and precisely navigate the drone and even strike a desired target. The same toy commercial drones, which are used for, let's say, shooting a movie, same drones can be fitted with an explosive or a grenade to carry out a precision strike. Kamikaze drones, which can be sent on suicide missions, strapped with explosives, striking at high speed into a desired target. Loitering munition, such as the Israeli Harop, which India used during Operation Sindoor to target Pakistan, or the Shahid Iranian loitering munition. So these are drones which almost turn into a missile. They can basically loiter over the target for some time, give time for the operator to choose and pick the target carefully, selectively, and then strike almost like a missile with precision. So the emergence of these new platforms is changing the nature of warfare and posing an unprecedented challenge for air defense. Because today, countries or even terrorist groups can overwhelm your air defense by firing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drones. Look at how Pakistan launched 300, 400 drones simultaneously at India. India also did the same. Then look at Operation Spiderweb, one of the most legendary covert military operations ever seen in human history. where Ukraine secretly infiltrated these drones mounted on trucks, released them en masse, controlling remotely and striking Russian strategic bombers, destroying billions of dollars worth of aircraft that carry nuclear weapons by using cheap $2,000 drone. Using few hundred $2,000 drones, Ukraine destroyed more than 40 Russian strategic bombers and aircraft worth $7 billion. This is changing the very dynamics of warfare. Now, the question is, how do you defend against this? How do you step up your air defense? So, India has displayed some capabilities. We successfully intercepted most of the Pakistani projectiles. Most of the drones, missiles, and other projectiles Pakistan fired at India, they were successfully intercepted. The credit goes to our integrated air command control system, which is a unified air defense command control system that merges the assets of Army, Air Force with the Navy as well, providing for constant surveillance of the airspace and detection of enemy projectiles and launching automated interceptions. During Operation Sindoor, we even deployed a AI-based air defense system, Akash Theer, as part of the Akash surface to air missile system. The indigenous Akash performed tremendously well, and the AI controlled Akash Tir system managed to detect targets in real time. And it's a completely automated system which would automatically launch interceptor missiles, successfully taking down the targets. India even reportedly deployed laser weapons for the first time ever. A directed energy weapon was used to take down Pakistani drones. We deployed the Russian S-400, not against cheap drones, but against Pakistani missiles. So we have a layered air defense network, a multi layered air defense network with an integrated unified command control system. Along with this, you need short range, long range, and very close range counter weapons. Long range targets can be tackled by something like S-400. Mid range targets can be tackled by Akash air defense system. Whereas in extreme close range, you need anti drone guns to shoot them down by physically spotting them. Or there are anti drone systems which can help you capture the enemy drone as well. You can employ electronic warfare, cyber warfare to intercept the radio communication between the drone and the controller. You can intercept the GPS navigation. You can meddle with the coordinates which have been locked on, and you can make the drone come down and take it intact, which can be a valuable piece of intelligence as well. So there are many such non-kinetic methods. Without destroying the drone, you can bring them down by intercepting the communication link, by meddling with the GPS signal, and using anti-drone guns and capture methods which are available. Now, this is exactly what is being seen in the battlefield. Russia also has extensively used drones against Ukraine to deadly, devastating effect. Russia is especially targeting critical infrastructure of Ukraine. These have been targeted using cheap drones, which is dealing a severe economic blow to Ukraine. Israel has developed iron beam laser to shoot down the hundreds of drones that Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran are known to fire at Israel. So, what we are seeing is the evolution of a new military doctrine, a new strategy, new battlefield tactic, which is coming up. So, India will have to gear up for the future of the battlefield and warfare, especially with AI integration. Drone swarms will become even more sophisticated, posing significant challenges for air defense. So, what can India do? A question can be asked on this. So, we have to focus on our domestic drone industry, invest more on research, develop indigenous systems. We don't have to rely on foreign supplied drones and anti drone systems from Israel, US, and others. We need more indigenous platforms. We have to encourage our defense startups. There are several drone startups in our country. And by the way, drones have dual application. They can have a huge application in civilian applications, even during disaster management. So India has to proactively encourage the domestic drone ecosystem, expand our air defense system as well, and refine our doctrine refine our protocols, train the armed forces, make them more vigilant, have a integrated joint air defense command in the coming days, where we can unify the air defense units of Air Force, Army, and Navy, and they can function as an integrated joint theaterized command looking after the airspace and the safety of Indian airspace. So, this is what you can suggest. Greater public private partnership where government institutions like DRDO, HAL, NAL can collaborate with the private startups and the large defense companies. Today, all the Indian conglomerates are in the defense space: Mahindra, L&T, Reliance, Adani, Tata Group. So they can partner with the smaller startups, encourage them, support them, work with the public sector. And that is what is needed: indigenous technology to deal with these future threats. So take up this practice question. Examine the impact of drone and loitering munition warfare on modern air defense systems. Discuss operational adaptations and implications for India's defense strategy. So please go through the structure. I've given the reference points. Then, in the body, you have to be very specific. Give examples. For all these arguments, give examples, as I told you, from battlefields around the world, from conflicts that you have seen. Add some relevant examples to make it more rich, and then conclude the answer with suggestions for India. How India can be prepared for air defense against such changes that are happening in drone warfare. So, this is your model answer. Please make a note of this and use it for your answer writing. Next, let me discuss another topic: China's gray zone warfare during Operation Sindoor. We have covered this, but I would just like to introduce you to the concept of gray zone warfare. See, this topic which I have picked, it refers to China's nexus with Pakistan. The same thing what we discussed: how China was there in the battlefield during Operation Sindoor, how it was actively supporting Pakistan in the battlefield, right? It was passing on intelligence using its satellites and drones. It was engaging in electronic warfare against India, intercepting our communications, and it was trying to support Pakistan's information warfare campaign. And it was essentially engaging in cyber war attempts as well to disrupt Indian strikes on Pakistan. So, this Chinese involvement in helping Pakistan, the one front reinforced war that we discussed, it's a clear example, a classic example of gray zone warfare. UPSC might ask you about this. It's a very important concept. What is gray zone warfare? What threats does India face in this regard from China? How can India deal with gray zone warfare tactics? So, without understanding the concept, you can't approach this question, even though you know about China's involvement in Pakistan. Even though we have discussed China's role during Operation Sindoor, still, if you don't know the concept, you can't really write a good answer. So, let's understand what is gray zone warfare. See, gray zone warfare is in between peace and war. When you take two countries, for example, let's say two neighboring states, either they are at peace, meaning there's no conflict, no war between them, they have peaceful relations. The other extreme is they are at conflict, they're fighting with each other. In between peace and war, there is a state that is the gray zone state. So essentially, a country is neither at peace nor at direct war, but it is resorting to certain aggressive, hostile actions which stops short of war. For example, waging a proxy war, like what Pakistan does. Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorist groups, the usage of non-state actors by state actors, what we see in the case of Pakistan, is an example of gray zone warfare. So Pakistan is not at war with India, but it is using terrorists as proxies to target India. So Pakistan's steps stops one step short of full-fledged war. It's not an overt war, but it's not peace as well. So it's neither peace, it's not a full-fledged war, it's in between. So such provocative actions, which stops just one step short of war, is what we term as gray zone warfare. Engaging in espionage, cyber espionage, or psychological warfare, information warfare, even legal warfare. trying to drag a country by filing cases, dragging a country into disputes, disturbing the status quo, maybe through border incursions or by enabling cross border infiltrations of criminals and infiltrators and illegal migrants. All these are gray zone tactics. So it's neither full fledged overt war nor peace, it's between. It stops one step short of war. And these limited steps, provocative steps, designed to trigger the target, designed to trigger the enemy, is called gray zone warfare tactics. And China has become a master of gray zone warfare. It does the same with Taiwan. It does the same with Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, and it does the same with India as well. Experts even call this borrowed knife strategy of how China is using Pakistan as a proxy and how it is trying to stab India. During Operation Sindoor, it was not just Pakistan which tried stabbing India. China was also holding the knife. China essentially gave a good knife to Pakistan to stab India. Experts, that's why they call it the borrowed knife strategy, where China was in the battlefield, giving direct active support, tactical support, by passing intelligence, by engaging in electronic and cyber warfare and psychological warfare to support Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. So, this is where you need to understand what kind of weapons and support has China been giving to Pakistan. Look at the weapon platforms, the HQ-9 air defense systems, which India, by the way, destroyed. We destroyed a couple of HQ-9 air defense platforms in Lahore, Sialkot, and Karachi. It has supplied the advanced J-10 and the JF-17 fighter jets, the PL-15E beyond visual range air-to-air missiles, which most likely was used by Pakistani Air Force to shoot down a few Indian jets. Because India has acknowledged, right, at various platforms that yes, we did lose few fighter jets, but we don't know how many. We've denied losing five, but definitely two or three or maybe four fighter jets did go down. And reports indicate most likely they were shot down by PL-15E, which is a Chinese air-to-air missile. Now, do you realize that this is a sort of test between Chinese weapon systems and Western weapon systems? This is also a motivation for China to arm and back Pakistan. For the first time ever, Chinese weapon platforms like HQ-9 air defense systems, Chinese fighter jets, Chinese air-to-air missiles were being tested against Western weapon platforms like the Rafale and American platforms as well. So China is very adept at these gray zone warfare tactics. It has been using Pakistan, amplifying Pakistan's proxy war against India, creating this distraction and parallelly testing the weapons as well, which could help China someday to fine tune its own weapon systems. Now, China will draw lessons from how these weapons operated against the Indian Western weapon systems that we had, and they will fine tune the platforms. This has a larger uh, economic dimension, a geopolitical dimension. So, what can India do to counter China's gray zone warfare tactics? See, one thing is very clear: we have to step up our C4 ISR and situational awareness. We have to step up our command, control. We have to focus on ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, meaning we need more satellites with possible military applications to watch China's movements and China's deployments. We need more capabilities, drone capabilities, cyber capabilities, so that we can intercept communication, generate more valuable intelligence, which can help us anticipate what China is doing. And that is what creates the awareness about the situation. The situational awareness is important. So, intelligence gathering has to step up, not just technical intelligence, even human intelligence, infiltrating the Chinese establishment, Chinese security forces, having human assets in China who can work for Indian intelligence agencies. That is something India should work in the long term. Augmenting our air defense, which we have already mentioned, a multi layered, unified air defense command to deal with all the aerial threats. Strengthening deterrence. We need to push back on the China Pakistan nexus. We have to create a disincentive for them. India should tell China we will not buy certain goods from China if they continue having this nexus with Pakistan. Essentially, resort to arm twisting, use the leverage, whatever leverage we have because of our economic ties, and try to bring international pressure as well to corner China so that we push China away from Pakistan. Then deepen our engagement with like minded partners, European partners, Japan, Australia, the Quad countries, boost our indigenous defense capabilities, modernize our armed forces with more advanced systems from Russia, Israel, US, France. But there should be greater focus on domestic weapon platforms and indigenization, and prepare for all scenarios. Prepare for a two front war, a two and a half front war, even a one front reinforced war. So we need a complete rethink of our engagement with China and Pakistan. And dealing with gray zone tactics is not easy because you can't prove to what extent China was involved, right? You can't prove in front of the global community, and you can't directly retaliate against China because their involvement would largely be covert, behind the scenes. That is why gray zone tactics has to be countered with gray zone tactics. You can't retaliate through overt methods for gray zone warfare. Retaliate through gray zone methods itself. That is what India should also develop. Hybrid, unconventional warfare. Stopping one step short of war, like meddling in Tibet, interfering in the succession process of Dalai Lama, establishing ties with Taiwan, right? So these are the steps. Working with Quad countries, stepping up military relations with Japan, Vietnam, and Philippines. This is what will allow India to maintain that pressure on China and counter its gray zone tactics. So I think this is enough. There are few more topics. The PPT has all the slides. There are, I think, four more topics from security, two, three topics from disaster management. But since we are running out of time, let me stop the discussion here. But I will share the entire PPT. Don't worry. Even the remaining five, six topics which are there, that will also be there in this PDF, which I'm sharing in my Telegram channel. So please go to the start of the video, scan the QR code, join my Telegram channel. I'll give you the entire PPT. So now I think we have covered almost 20, 21 topics. There are last five, six topics left. So I urge all of you, please go through that later. Go through the notes. Every point is there. The structure is also given for practice question with model answers. So please go through that, make a note, and let me know if the session was useful and beneficial. So that is it for today. I hope this marathon was really useful. Let's hope some questions come out of it. And if you did like the class, press the like button, share your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching.